Chapter 1579. Lin Yuan let out a breath of relief. He felt that he had unlocked the Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill Life Imprint. A large amount of vitality poured into Genius and Chimy's bodies. It allowed Genius and Chimy to withstand the burden of the bloodline metamorphosis on their bodies. However, before Lin Yuan could put his heart at ease, a voice suddenly rang out. Chimy and Genius were in trouble again. This time Lin Yuan didn't know how to deal with it. This was because Genius had exploded into a crimson flower of blood. After Genius exploded, it froze in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan's eyes were instantly filled with blood. He yelled out involuntarily, "Genius!" As Genius's body shattered, Genius's spiritual energy, which was desperately suppressing, instantly went berserk. At that moment Morbius' sigh came from beside Lin Yuan. As expected, bloodlines can't evolve endlessly. It could understand the relationship between Lin Yuan and Genius. It could be said that when it had just formed a contract with Lin Yuan, it had consumed nearly all of Lin Yuan's spiritual energy. During that period of time, it had consumed nearly all of Lin Yuan's spiritual energy. During that period of time, Genius had accompanied Lin Yuan all the way. It looked at Lin Yuan's expression and bloodshot eyes. Morbius' soul projection stretched out its hand, and reddish gold energy surged in Morbius' palm. Morbius separated a strand of energy from the palm of his hand. It lifted its hand and poured in Genius' violent spiritual energy. Genius' violent spiritual energy instantly calmed down. The calm spiritual energy condensed together as though it was brewing something. Morbius said to Lin Yuan, "Partner, don't worry. Genius is a spiritual type Fae. This bloodline evolution has allowed Genius to transform from a spiritual type to a soul type. Be it a spiritual type or soul type, the soul is an essential existence. This trace of origin that I have separated is enough for Genius to find a way out in a desperate situation." Lin Yuan had some confidence in his heart. However, he was still worried about Genius' situation. According to Morbius, Genius evolution this time would probably turn into a life form without a physical body. He would probably become a creature without a physical body. He missed the time when Genius acted like a spoiled child in front of him. But as long as Genius could survive, everything would be fine. Furthermore, Genius's physical body state was determined by its bloodline metamorphosis. Lin Yuan suppressed the worry in his heart and asked Morbius, "Morbius, you've separated a strand of your origin. Are you going to slumber again?" Morbius shook its head in response. He smiled and said to Lin Yuan, "Don't worry. Thanks to you, partner, I became a gold fantasy breed Fae. The current me will only become weaker if I separate out some of my essence. You won't let me sleep again. I'll need about 2 months to recover the source power I used this time. Of course, if you can find something to fill the hole, even if it's just a small part of it. From now on, I'll be able to freely use my origin energy." Hear that Morbius will not sleep. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a trace of joy in his heart. However, Genius and Chimy's situation made him unable to smile. Chimy had been fighting with the main Phoenix species Fae in its body. The main Phoenix species Fae bloodline in his body had already worn down his will to fight. Genius's unforeseen event made Chimy anxious. The anxious Chimy only wanted to return to Genius's side. However, Chimy had been disturbed by the noisy phoenix cry produced by the bloodline in his body. The main Phoenix species bloodline was also constantly burning and eroding its sound bird bloodline. Chimy was enraged. It guided the Jasmine Lily's life force into its body to stabilize its body. At the same time, it took the initiative to absorb the life force to restore its sound bird bloodline. Chimy, which had always paid attention to its image, raised its claws and controlled the sound bird bloodline and the main Phoenix species bloodline to claw into a ball. It forcefully pecked a piece of flesh from the main Phoenix species bloodline. It ate raw phoenix meat and drank phoenix blood. Chimy forcefully relied on the reckless energy that was born from its anxiety. It completely swallowed its main Phoenix species bloodline into the sound bird bloodline. After Chimy's sound bird bloodline devoured the Luan Phoenix bloodline, there was a slight change. Previously, when he was riding on Li Xian's Fae carriage, Lin Yuan realized Chimy's bloodline was against the Luan Phoenix Fae that was pulling the carriage. It produced a suppressive effect. At that time, Lin Yuan wondered if it was related to the sound bird bloodline in Chaime's body. Was it related to the devouring of the Luan phoenix bloodline? Now Chaime had devoured the main phoenix species bloodline. Lin Yuan realized that there was a pressure on Chaime's badly mutilated body. There was a kind of pressure. It was very similar to the pressure of the main phoenix species Fei that Lin Yuan had felt in the Li family. However, when compared carefully, it was much stronger than the main phoenix species Fei's pressure. It was as though there was a life form above the clouds. It was as though it was looking down at the Fei with the main phoenix species bloodline. Lin Yuan felt that if Chaime had a chance to face the main phoenix species Fei in the future, even if this main phoenix species Fei was stronger than Chaime by a major grade, after Chaime released its bloodline's power, that main phoenix species Fei might be scared out of its wits. Gradually Chaime's aura calmed down. A bright light wrapped around Chaime's body. It cleansed Chaime's body. The golden light set off waves of cicada sounds. This sound seemed to see through the world's essence. Lin Yuan used this sound to listen and seemed to hear the heart sounds of other life forms in the spirit lock spatial zone. The cicada sounds that gushed out of Chaime's body were getting stronger and stronger. Immediately after, a tail feather that was covered with sun wheels appeared. It extended out from the golden light. This tail feather was extremely wide and it was just like a cattail leaf fan. There were layers of sun wheels on top of each other. There were a total of 99 sun wheels. Immediately after, 2 more tail feathers extended out. These 2 tail feathers were slightly longer and more slender. The tail feathers that were slightly longer were not golden in color, but a faint light blue. These 2 blue tail feathers were like 2 zither with cloud chi as the strings. As they fluttered, they emitted cloud chi notes one after another. A clear and melodious cry rang out. Chaime's body broke through the golden light. Now Chaime's body was a mix of gold and blue colors. Previously, Chaime's blue and gold colors were separated and presented 2 different states. But now Chaime's body color had perfectly blended blue and gold together. Chaime squeezed all the parts related to light and sun onto the tail feather behind it. The golden parts on its body, those sun patterns, had also turned into the shape of musical notes. These sun patterns turned into musical notes and condensed above Chaime's head. They actually slowly condensed into a 5-stringed pipa. The upper and lower parts of the pipa presented the state of sunrise and sunset. Chapter 1580. Chaime's 2 blue tail feathers fluttered in the air. They touched the lute strings above its head. A symphony echoed. The golden musical notes transformed into birds and flew out from the lute strings. They danced around Chaime. It felt as though 100 birds were paying homage to the ancestor. Chaime had obviously entered the final phase of its bloodline metamorphosis. As genius spiritual energy was being compressed, it was slowly forming a physical form. This materialized form was completely different from the arm that genius had formed with its mental strength. Chaime's spiritual energy arm was in a translucent state. At that moment, this spiritual energy compressed into a body. But it was a real solid state. All of a sudden, this condensed spiritual energy seemed to have increased by several times and was constantly expanding. Then a meow echoed from within the spiritual energy. A spirit cat appeared at the original location of the spiritual energy. The size of this spirit cat was twice of genius' previous size. Its tail was actually 20 to 30 meters long. The 8 tails were spreading wildly. The tails formed by spiritual energy seemed to be able to block all external damage. Lin Yuan held his breath and looked at the evolved genius. At that moment, genius' eyes slowly opened. Lin Yuan and a pair of white eyes looked at each other. This pair of white eyes looked very empty. But after a closer look, it was extremely intelligent. It seemed to be able to contain all the impurities in the world. The moment genius opened its eyes, the 8 long tails behind it clustered around Lin Yuan. Genius' enlarged body walked to Lin Yuan's side. It let out a meow and leaped into Lin Yuan's embrace. Genius' body might be twice as big as before, but it was still very harmonious in Lin Yuan's embrace. Genius' previous body was only the size of Lin Yuan's palm. If Genius was said to be a kitten before, it was still very harmonious in Lin Yuan's embrace. If Genius was said to be a kitten before, the current Genius finally felt like a cat. Lin Yuan realized that Genius, which was in his embrace, didn't have any trace of weight. Genius clearly had a clear texture to the touch, and its fur felt exactly the same as before. Genius spoke to Lin Yuan with a childish voice. Lin Yuan, I made you worry. After this evolution, if Genius could remember 3 pieces of red braised pork before, Genius should be able to remember at least 30 pieces now. After hearing Genius' words, Lin Yuan thought to himself. Could it be that after this evolution Genius' mental strength had increased by 10 times? The strength of Genius' mental strength was already very shocking. Genius was a diamond/fantasy breed. It could resist the attacks of spiritual type phase below Myth 3. Now that his spiritual energy had increased by 10 times, wouldn't it mean that a creation breed spiritual type Fae would be able to attack? Smart also had a high chance of being immune to it. After a Fae became a myth breed, its spiritual energy growth would slow down. When a myth breed Fae became a creation breed, its spiritual energy would at most increase by 2 to 3 times. With Genius's current mental strength, he was able to defeat the enemies with his current mental strength. It was enough to be called the nemesis of spiritual phase. At that moment Genius spoke. Lin Yuan, Genius was previously afraid of the mental toxin. Now Genius is not afraid anymore. Moreover, Genius's soul energy is much better now. Genius feels that if we use this mental energy to concoct the spiritual liquid, the speed would increase by at least 50%. Genius, condense your soul power. I keep having a strange feeling. It seems that by grasping this feeling, Genius will be able to enter another state when mixing the spiritual fluid. It's just that this feeling, no matter how Genius condenses its soul power, it feels very blurry. It seems like I need to comprehend something. While speaking, Genius didn't stop using its cheek to rub against Lin Yuan's cheek. Previously, Genius liked to be shy and very reserved. But this time, after experiencing life and death, Genius only wanted to stick close to Lin Yuan. Even if it was concocting the spirit fluid, it had to be by Lin Yuan's side. When Lin Yuan heard Genius' words, his heart stirred. He immediately revealed a delighted expression. Could Genius, whose bloodline had transformed again, have found the path to become a Class 5 creation master? The Moon Empress didn't tell Lin Yuan how a pinnacle Class 4 creation master could break through to become a Class 5 creation master. However, what Genius had just described was very similar to the feeling of a Class 4 creation master breaking through to a Class 5 creation master. Lin Yuan was planning to ask his master, the Moon Empress. Mystic Moon was a pinnacle Class 4 creation master. Lin Yuan knew that Fays also had the potential to become creation masters. However, it was much harder for a Fae to become a creation master than a spirit chi professional. Out of 10,000 individuals, there might only be one person with creation master talent. Out of 100,000 individuals with creation master talent, there might only be one Class 1 creation master. For a Fae to become a creation master, it was almost as difficult as having a Class 4 creation master among humans. Genius becoming a creation master was different from Mystic Moon becoming a creation master. Genius and Mystic Moon were both spiritual type Fays. Mystic Moon relied on her innate talent, while Genius relied on its species ability. This was also the reason why all 100 Questions beasts could become creation masters. From the Moon Empress, Lin Yuan understood the situation of a Class 4 creation master evolving into a Class 5 creation master. It would allow Lin Yuan to help Genius comprehend to the greatest extent. Just as Lin Yuan was preparing to check on Genius' exclusive skill, he wanted to see what species Genius had transformed from the internet beast into. Chimy's side had another anomaly. Chimy suddenly drilled into the pipa that was formed by the golden musical notes. Then Chimy's body entered the pipa. 99 sun wheels turned into 99 suns. They converged at the pipa's neck towards the head. The final sun actually flew out of the pipa's head. Lin Yuan looked at the sun with astonishment. This sun was almost the same as the sun in the outside world. However, this sun was too weak. This sun was truly able to release sunlight. Could Chimy's bloodline have evolved and created a sun in its body? The pipa's transformation didn't end with the appearance of this sun. The pipa's strings were automatically moving. Thousands of golden birds were circling around the pipa and dancing rhythmically. Chimy had turned into a totem and was imprinted in the center of the pipa. At that moment, all the golden birds instantly rushed together in a frenzy. Finally, they used the musical notes to form the image of a golden woman. Lin Yuan looked at the image of the woman. He noticed that it was rather similar to the human form that Chimy had transformed into after eating the divine movement Bodhi fruit. If Chimey had transformed into a female servant previously, the woman that was formed by the golden musical notes was a princess. At that moment the girl picked up the pipa and turned around. She looked at Lin Yuan and Genius with a radiant smile. However, golden tears were dripping down from the girl's eyes. When they landed on the ground they turned into golden birds in smoke. They lingered around the girl. Chapter 1581. Smoke curled up as though it was a completely different world. It had an indescribable immortal aura. The golden bird was light and graceful, and it had the aura of a phoenix species fae. The bird crashed into the golden woman's pipa. It would produce a sound like pearls falling on a plate. At that moment Chimey's tears seemed to be endless. Lin Yuan and Genius knew that the golden woman's image was formed by Chimey's energy. It was formed by the energy in Chimey's body. Crying was Chimey's way of expressing its emotions. Chimey's tears had caused Genius and Lin Yuan's heart to ache. At that moment Chimey spoke. Genius, why did you explode into a flower of blood? Chimey's sobbing voice echoed gently. Its sobbing voice was mixed with rejoice and sorrow. It might be happy that Genius had completed its bloodline metamorphosis, but the scene of Genius exploding into a flower of blood was still flashing in its mind. The scene of Genius exploding into a flower of blood was still constantly flashing in Chimey's mind. It was hard for Chimey to recover from this. This scene was similar to Genius and Chimey's bloodline metamorphosis in the Spirit Lock spatial zone a few months ago. Chimey had metamorphosed into a clear sound bird, and Genius had metamorphosed into the Internet of Everything beast. However, it was the exact opposite back then. It was Chimey that had exploded into a flower of blood. It was that time when Genius had personally witnessed Chimey exploding into a flower of blood. It was only then that Genius got rid of his usual laziness and wanted to become stronger. Now it was the opposite. It gave Chimey a feeling that it had to become stronger. Only then would it be able to protect Lin Yuan and Genius. At that moment Chimey had matured a lot. It wasn't just the star-webbed sparrow voice lowly goddess anymore. It had transformed into a human form and had an offline meeting with its fans. It was no longer Chimey's ultimate goal. All of its ostentatiousness was in the face of its partner's life and death. It had turned into a firm belief. Chimey had to spread its wings and no longer hide behind Lin Yuan and Genius. Instead it would try to shelter Lin Yuan and Genius. The golden woman hugged the pipa with her hands. Her human form had fused into the pipa. The sun on the pipa had also sunk into the pipa. The inside of the pipa had disintegrated into 99 suns. Then a bird with a mix of blue and gold swayed its tail feathers behind it. It drilled out of the pipa and flew towards Lin Yuan and Genius. The phantom of the pipa also dissipated with the clouds after the bird flew out. Chimey landed in Lin Yuan's embrace and sat on its clever little head. Fortunately, Genius's mental power condensed body was sturdy enough. Otherwise, when Chimey's voice fell, it might even fall into Genius' body. Lin Yuan reached out to touch the feathers on Chimey's head and couldn't help but sigh. Inin's looks were really top-notch. Among all the avian fays that Lin Yuan had seen, there were no birds. No avian fae could compare to Chimey in terms of looks. Among the 10 most beautiful fays, the 5th-ranked fae was an avian fae. Her name was Hibiscus brocade crane. The hibiscus brocade crane was a crane species fae that could mobilize multiple elements. Among the crane species fae's bloodline, it was ranked in the top 3. However, no matter how he ranked it, he couldn't compare to Grey, who had evolved into a favored spirit. Grey's bloodline could no longer be considered as a crane species fae's bloodline. Because in a sense, the favored spirit carried the will of heaven and earth and couldn't be considered an ordinary fae. As for the 5th-ranked most beautiful fae, the hibiscus brocade crane, it wasn't on the same level as Chimey's appearance. In Lin Yuan's opinion, there was no other fae that could compare to Chimey. Could only be the purple sky mythical butterfly Purple Sky. In comparison, it had to be said. The male butterfly Purple Sky was superior. Chimey was bouncing around on Genius' head. It was checking on Genius' body and wanted to see if there were any hidden injuries after Genius evolution. The shy Genius used its kitten paws to cover its eyes. Chimey is too much. How can you keep looking at Genius' tail? Lin Yuan was preparing to use Morbius True Data to check on Genius and Chimey after their bloodlines had evolved. Lin Yuan first checked on Genius. Fae name: Exceptional Fate Knowing Beast Fae Species. Illusion Cat Species / Illusion Cat Species, Fae Grade. Diamond 10 out of 10. Fey type. Spiritual/soul, Fey quality. Fantasy V abilities frowny face memory inference. When memorizing something it can accurately remember every detail and analyze. It will organize the data and information to deduce the truth. Cat swarm. If the host can control a feline Fey and obtain its swarm, the host can obtain the elemental affinity and physique of the feline Fays that swarm the host for a short period of time. Every time the feline Fays are swarmed, they will be weakened for a period of time. Spiritual expansion. Use the host's spiritual energy as the contractor's spiritual energy reserve. Even though the contractor can't casually use the spiritual expansion to increase the spiritual energy reserve, when the host receives spiritual energy damage, the host can use the spiritual expansion's spiritual energy to resist. Lord of all cats. The new ruler of all feline Fays. It has created the glory of feline Fays and can use spiritual energy to form a contract with other feline Fays. It can control the feline Fay's life and death, and it can share the feline Fay's spiritual energy. Spirit substitution. Through the interaction between different spiritual energy, the spiritual energy will undergo a change. It will consume the spiritual energy and transform it into soul spirit power. Spirit tail stimulation. When using soul spirit power, one tail can be consumed to double the original soul spirit power. At the same time, a portion of the body's spiritual energy can be condensed into a secondary tail as a backup. When there is no tail, the spirit tail stimulation will not be able to be used. Exclusive trait frowny face tool transformation. Can turn into a tool for the contractor to use. Life knowing tail. 1. Connected tail. According to the number of tails, life forms will be connected. The connected life forms will be able to share thoughts and be telepathic. 2. Sky connecting tail. Condense all the tails into one and think about the knowledge that one desires. By sacrificing one's spiritual energy, one can directly communicate with the world's willpower and seek answers from the world's willpower. Lin Yuan took a look. He realized that Genius's Fey name had changed from Interconnected Beast to Sky-Knowing Fate Beast. The Fey species had also changed from Spirit Cat/Wisdom Cat. It had become Illusion Cat/Illusion Cat. Even his skills and exclusive skills had undergone earth-shattering changes. To Lin Yuan's knowledge, the Fey world didn't have a Illusion Cat/Illusion Cat species. It was probably because of Genius's bloodline transformation which gave rise to a new species. Genius's original normal ability was precise memory. Its elite ability was knowledge analysis. Right now, Genius normal and elite skills had obviously merged together. It had become the current normal ability memory inference. Instant update of Beast Evolution Quotient. Please bookmark this site so that you can read it online the next time there's an update. Update. Do 5's Endgame mobile version updates fastest. Chapter 1582. Lin Yuan looked at Genius's normal ability. It was a description of memory reasoning. Lin Yuan realized that memory reasoning was much more powerful than accurate memory and knowledge analysis. Previously, knowledge analysis was based on the minor details. It would make the most conjecture based on knowledge. Now it was using data to organize information to deduce the truth. The truth represented absolute correctness. As long as Genius analyzed something, it would definitely be correct. Lin Yuan could already see it. Based on normal ability memory reasoning, Genius was able to organize large quantities of spirit fluid formulas. It could be said that Genius was the strongest information processor in the entire main world. Even the Star Web's information processing couldn't be compared to Genius. The Star Web's information processing couldn't guarantee that it was absolutely correct. As Genius normal and elite skills had been combined, Genius normal and elite skills had been combined. The elite ability's position was now empty. Genius's elite ability had become Cat Swarm. Genius's platinum ability, Smart Cat Spirit, had become Lord of all cats. Smart Cat Spirit allowed Genius to use its spiritual energy to form a contract with cat species Fays. Could control the life and death of the cat species Fays. It could also unilaterally share the cat species Fays' spiritual energy. Smart Cat species Fays were very rare. At present, only the 100 Questions Beast was known to be common. Genius's control over the cat species Fays had changed. Could control all the cat species Fays. That was to say, as long as Genius thought about it. It could form a contract with all the cat species Fays. Among all the Fays, the cat species Fays. It was a huge category. Furthermore, there were plenty of powerful feline phase. Genius's control over the cat species phase was based on its spiritual energy. Baidu, search the bloodline metamorphosis allowed Genius's spiritual energy to increase by 10 times. That was to say, as long as Genius thought about it. It could increase the 100 Questions Beast Legion's 100 Questions Beasts by 10 times. It could increase from over 100 Questions Beasts to over 1,000. Platinum ability, Smart Cat Lord, and elite ability Cat Swarm. It was obvious that they complemented each other. When their effects complemented each other, it wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Cat Swarm allowed Genius to control cat species phase within a short period of time. It obtained its own elemental affinity and physique to control the cat species phase. If Genius had only contracted one cat species phase with offensive capabilities, it would be a different story. Genius's strength might not increase by much. But what if Genius contracted hundreds or thousands of feline phase that were adept at combat? These feline phase had different elemental affinities. When facing different enemies, Genius could make targeted choices. He would pick the most suitable batch from the feline phase he had. A feline phase elemental affinity and physique. To restrain the enemy. Everyone knew. The physique of feline phase was generally stronger than that of canines. Lin Yuan was flabbergasted as he looked at Genius elite ability, Cat Swarm, and platinum ability, Lord of all cats. Now Genius was no longer a helpless little kitten. The two skills were unleashed simultaneously. Genius would become a powerful cat war god on the battlefield. He felt that he should be in the swamp world. Build a cat garden for Genius. Get a batch of powerful and all-round feline phase for Genius. All the outstanding talents of the various departments would be given a few. He and the 100 Questions Beast army would nurture them well. It was usually kept in the cat garden in the swamp world. When it was time to fight, he would let Genius use the feline phase elemental affinity and physique. Genius Gold ability, spiritual expansion, didn't have any changes. It was just that the spiritual energy it contained was 10 times stronger than before. As for the diamond ability, Spirit Tail Burst, it was still the same. It could let Genius hoard secondary tails. Genius's ability was already shocking enough for Lin Yuan. Genius's exclusive skill, Interconnection Tail, made Lin Yuan feel that. Genius's bloodline was truly terrifying. Genius's original exclusive skill, Interconnection Tail, had become Life-Knowing Tail. The original Interconnection Tail's function still existed. It had become a branch ability of the Life-Knowing Tail exclusive skill. Apart from the Interconnection Tail, Genius's tail had another ability. It allowed Genius to combine all the tails together. It could connect to heaven and exhaust its spiritual energy. It could answer questions with heaven. It could use spiritual energy as a tuition fee. It could treat heaven as a teacher. As long as Genius could afford the tuition fee, heaven could teach Genius any knowledge. Such a function existed. Genius's diamond ability, Spirit Tail Burst, could hoard secondary tails. It was very useful. When asking about some profound secrets, Genius could exhaust the secondary tail's spiritual energy. It could be treated as an additional tuition fee. There was no limit to the amount of secondary tails, and Genius could keep hoarding. Previously, Lin Yuan wanted to help Genius ask its master, the Moon Empress. How could a pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master break through to become a Class 5 Creation Master? From the looks of it, it was no longer necessary. As long as Genius used its exclusive skill, Life-Knowing Tail, the branch of the Sky Connecting Tail would ask Heaven. Heaven would give Genius the answer. At this moment, Lin Yuan finally knew. Why was Genius named the Omnipotent Knowing Fate Beast under True Data? It could be said that as long as one had spiritual energy. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Genius was omniscient and omnipotent. Right now, Genius was a combination of combat, defense, and support. Among all of Lin Yuan's phase, apart from Morbius, Genius was definitely the strongest combat power in Lin Yuan's hands. After sensing Lin Yuan's thoughts, Morbius said softly, "Partner, Genius's bloodline has reached the limit of a life form. Genius's bloodline has reached the limit of a life form. Although it's not impossible for Tsongming's bloodline to evolve again. But if it takes the next step, it won't be Genius's bloodline that will change. It will be Genius's life providence." This was the first time Lin Yuan had heard of life providence. Just as Lin Yuan was thinking about what a life providence was, only Morbius continued. Speaking of the strongest partner. Genius isn't the strongest Fey you have apart from me. Although Chimy's abilities are not as good as Smart in terms of functionality, it's still very powerful. But in terms of attack and control, Chimy is much stronger than Genius. After all, Chimy really created a sun. A sun that can emit light and heat, yet it belongs to Chimy alone. If this sun is strong enough, it can even rise into the sky and become a celestial body. Upon hearing Morbius' words, Lin Yuan was shocked. He looked at one of Genius's tails in disbelief. It was Chimy on a swing. Chimy was currently playing on the swing. While admiring his tail feathers, he felt very satisfied. He immediately used Morbius' true data to check on Chimy. Instant update of familiar evolution quotient. Please bookmark this site so that you can read it online the next time there's an update. The mobile version of Do 5 has been updated the fastest. Chapter 1583. After probing, Lin Yuan finally knew. Why did Morbius say that? Not to mention being smart, it could not compare to Chimy in terms of combat. Lin Yuan felt that it was his Desolation Bloodline Fey Golden Wing. It could be upgraded to Diamond X/Fantasy V. It might not be comparable to Chimy. Fey name, Phoenix New Sun Sparrow, Fey species, Sound Sparrow/Sound Sparrow, Fey grade. Diamond 10 out of 10. Fey type, Sound/Light, Fey quality. Fantasy V abilities: Frowny Face, Phoenix Cry sound. Dominates the Phoenix's power. Fuse the Phoenix cry into the musical notes to form a graceful bird. The bird-shaped musical notes have a huge penetrating effect. After touching the target, the musical notes will emit a phoenix cry to deter and interfere with the target. After the musical notes in the bird are attacked or blocked, they will split into a new bird. Light of the New Sun. The inherited bloodline dominates the main phoenix species phase bloodline. The extreme main phoenix's blood and light will condense into a new sun. Under the new sun's illumination, the Fey and its abilities will be quickly charged by sunlight. When the new sun's radiance is exhausted, it can be replenished with phoenix blood and phoenix soul. Phoenix seed sound. Through refining a phoenix species phase soul into a phoenix seed and injecting it into the bird formed by the musical notes, this bird will inherit the phoenix species phase intelligence and part of its abilities. Burning the phoenix seed will increase the musical note strength of the bird. Falling new sun. The condensed sun in the body will fall into the ground and form a domain filled with the sun's power. Before the energy in the sun domain is exhausted, the Fey will temporarily enter a state of immunity to most physical and elemental damage. Spiritual songstress. Fuses the soul into the song. By consuming the phoenix seed, the song will be given the ability to materialize into reality. The will or effects in the song can be used as an enhancement or weakening ability. The enhancement effect on allies will be treated as a blessing, while the weakening effect on enemies will be treated as a curse. Clear harp sound. Anchor an object that can release light-type energy. When controlling this object or being accepted by this object, the sound or sound-type energy can be projected onto this object. With this object as a base, the sound will spread in all directions. Exclusive characteristic: Frowny Face Dual Sun Fetters. The stronger the sun you control, the stronger your ability to communicate with other suns. Based on the degree of fetters, when singing to the sun, you can borrow energy from other suns to replenish the energy consumed in your own sun. New sun body. Fuse the sun you have with your body and enter the state of the Sanskrit bird. Without changing the effects of your skills, you can swap attributes. After seeing true data, Chimy's abilities were displayed. Lin Yuan felt that even his soul was trembling. Oh my god. Is this an ability that Fays should have? Lin Yuan had seen the Mother of Bloodbath and Grey's true data. The Mother of Bloodbath and Grey were both heavenly spirits. However, Lin Yuan felt that the Mother of Bloodbath's and Grey's abilities and exclusive skills were more valuable. It simply couldn't be compared to Chimy's abilities and exclusive skills. He felt that Chimy's abilities and exclusive skills were of a higher dimension than the favored spirit. Heavenly spirits were creatures loved by the origin world, able to communicate with a certain natural phenomenon or celestial body in the origin world. However, the premise for a favored spirit to be powerful was that it was attached to something that originally existed in the origin world. However, Chimy had used its bloodline to create a sun. This was undoubtedly a kind of transcendence. Chimy was the same as genius. Chimey used to be a plume sparrow/plume bird. Now it had become a sound sparrow/sound sparrow. Chimey's sound sparrow/sound sparrow was the same as Genius's illusion cat/illusion cat. They were both species that didn't exist in the origin world. Chimey and Genius had also opened up a path that no living creature had taken before. Speaking of abilities and exclusive skills, Chimey's abilities and exclusive skills had changed. However, they were much bigger than Genius. First, Chimey's normal ability, Broken Jade Sound, had become the current Phoenix Cry. Broken Jade Sound was to shoot a ball of sound at the target. It was a huge note with the sound of beautiful jade shattering. The sound of jade shattering had a certain degree of interference. After hitting the target, it would shatter into 10 spiral-shaped sound thorns. It had an extremely powerful penetrating ability. Now Phoenix Cry allowed Chimey to fuse the Phoenix Cry into the note. It caused the note to turn into a fluttering bird. The bird would hit the target and emit the Phoenix Cry. While the original interference effect was present, it had an additional deterrence effect. After the flying bird note was attacked, it would also split like Broken Jade Sound. It seemed like these two abilities weren't much different. However, the normal Phoenix Cry meant that Chimey dominated the Phoenix's power. It seemed like Chimey had used its bloodline to devour the bloodline of those main Phoenix species phase. It didn't disappear. Instead, it had become a tool for Chimey. It had evolved into Chimey's ability attack. Chimey's original elite ability was Light Bathing. Light Bathing's effect was to recover one's consumed vitality. It was a kind of self-recovery ability. Now, Chimey's ability, Light of the New Sun, allowed Chimey to dominate the main Phoenix species phase bloodline. It transformed this bloodline into a new sun. After the new sun rose, it was equivalent to a long-range attack. It imposed a supply station on Chimey. The light emitted by the new sun could quickly replenish Chimey's consumption. At the same time, it had Phoenix Cry and split flying bird note. It could also be recharged by the sunlight and become endlessly multiplying. Furthermore, this sun's energy was greatly consumed. Chimey could use the Phoenix Blood and Phoenix Soul to replenish it. It could replenish the sun formed by light of the new sun. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan understood Chimey's elite ability, Light of the New Sun. It was the fundamental reason why Chimey could create a sun on its own. The main components of this sun were the main Phoenix species bloodlines that Chimey had devoured. Lin Yuan thought to himself, how much does Chimey hate Phoenix species phase? He wanted to develop Light of the New Sun. He wanted to make this new sun stronger and stronger. Only God knew how much Phoenix blood and soul would be used as consumables to nourish it. Lin Yuan had previously provided dragon livers for the Golden Wing. He had specially set up a faction with Long Tao that sold dragon species phase and spiritual ingredients. He wanted to raise a large number of phase with the main dragon species bloodline. Now Lin Yuan felt that he needed to contact Zhou Xian. He wanted to set up another faction that raised Phoenix species phase. In the future, apart from the Golden Wing, which needed the blood of dragon species phase, Chimey also needed the blood and soul of ordinary Phoenix species phase. Chimey's silver ability, Phoenix Seed Voice Transmission, was similar to Light of the New Sun. It also needed the soul of a Phoenix species phase to refine the soul into a Phoenix Seed. When the Phoenix Seed fused into Phoenix Cry, it would strengthen the golden bird that Phoenix Cry had transformed into. It would also obtain the Phoenix Phase intelligence and part of its abilities. Chapter 1584. This made Phoenix minions attack the same as turning into a Phoenix species Fae. By burning the Phoenix Seed, it could also enhance the power of this attack. Lin Yuan was willing to build a Fae breeding base for Chimey to nurture Phoenix species Faes. In the future, Chimey could have as many Phoenix species Phase souls as it wanted. Chimey could refine a large number of Phoenix seeds to enhance its combat ability. Chimey's gold ability, Sunlight Ray, had now become Falling New Sunday. Sunlight Ray was an extremely simple support ability that had a large range. It could weaken targets within the range. It could enhance the activity of plant phase within the range. Now, Falling New Sun had strengthened the amplification on its side. Chimey's original platinum ability, Nirvana Sound, had also been integrated into it. It made the sun fall and formed the sun domain. Within the domain, Chimey was immune to most physical and elemental damage. This allowed Chimey to do whatever it wanted on the battlefield, dealing damage to its opponent's face. The current platinum ability, Spirit Songstress. It was Chimy's newly awakened ability through the sound sparrow bloodline. It still used the method of consuming the soul seed to materialize the image in the song in reality. At the same time, it could use the will and effect in the song. Most of the songs that Chimy could sing now were ancient songs. However, Lin Yuan knew a lot of special songs. It was like the lyrics of bloody love story that Lin Yuan had heard in his previous life. The more blood flows, the more sore hands, the emptier the heart, the more painful the flesh, the more vivid the feeling of being cut by 1,000 blades. The lyrics were sung by Chimy. The enemy would immediately feel the sore hands, bleeding and weakness. The heart would lose faith in the pain of being cut by 1,000 blades. Such negative effects would be applied to the enemy. It wasn't as simple as the negative effects. It would be judged as a curse. Many purification-type abilities could remove the negative effects. However, to remove the curse, only certain phase and specific abilities could do it. Without such phase, Chimy could sing all kinds of curse songs to torture the enemy. There were also many buff-type songs. The buff-type effects of these songs would be defined as blessings. The effects of blessings and curses were the same. They were very difficult to be purified by the purification ability. Just the spiritual songstress skill allowed Chimy to have unlimited possibilities. Chimy's diamond harp sound transformation didn't change at all. It was still the same as before. Previously, Chimy's first exclusive skill, Clear Sky, was bird song. He let the clouds disperse and summoned the sun. But now Chimy could produce a sun by itself. Therefore, the exclusive skill Clear Sky had become the current twin sun fetters. Chimy could communicate with the other suns through the new sun it gave birth to. They could even sing to the sun and borrow energy from it. Apart from the main world, every dimensional world had a sun. Chimy's exclusive skill, Twin Sun Fetters, could be used in any world. Furthermore, the sun that Chimy controlled was stronger. In that case, the ability to communicate with other suns would also become stronger. In other words, it was through the exclusive skill Twin Sun Fetters. Even without the help of the Mother of Bloodbath and Shueshua, Chimy only relied on itself through the sun that was born in its body. He could communicate with the sun of the origin world. It was also very easy for him to use the diamond-level skill Melodious Harp. He treated the sun of the origin world as an anchor. The more he looked at the exclusive skill Twin Sun Fetters, the more he liked Chimy's combat style. It was no different from a heavenly chosen spirit. However, Chimy did not directly communicate with the sun. Instead, it used the sun in its body. When Chimy had become a fantasy breed, it had obtained the Radiant Body exclusive skill. Now, the Radiant Body exclusive skill had become the new sun body. The new sun body's introduction was very simple. It was a combination of Chimy and the sun that it produced. It would enter a state where it was not the Sanskrit sound sparrow. Lin Yuan was slightly stunned when he saw the name Sanskrit sound sparrow. Lin Yuan immediately asked Chimy to use its exclusive skill New Sun Body. Upon receiving Lin Yuan's instruction, Chimy, which was swinging on Genius tail, flapped its wings. Its tail feathers swayed. 99 sun wheels fused together from Chimy's tail feathers. A new sun was placed on Chimy's head. Immediately after, Chimy moved toward the new sun. When the new sun entered its body ignited with a dazzling orange-red flame. Chimy's body suddenly turned into a bird with a wingspan of 30 meters. Along with Chimy's clear cry, the golden bird that was supposed to be born. At that moment, it had turned orange-red. It was burning with the same orange-red flame that was on Chimy's body. Lin Yuan understood that True Data's ability description didn't change the original ability effect. What did it mean by only changing its own attributes? Chimy entered a state where it was not the Sanskrit sound sparrow. The original Phoenix New Sun Sparrow's light and sound attributes had turned into the current fire and sound attributes. All of its abilities had also changed from the original light attribute to the fire attribute. It was considered an increase in attack ability. However, it correspondingly reduced its flexibility and range of abilities. In a battle, depending on the size of the battlefield, the choice of how to change the state could be decided according to the actual situation. When facing water-type phase, the Phoenix New Sun Sparrow wouldn't be restrained by the attribute. When facing plant-type phase, the Sanskrit sound sparrow could carry out the most effective attack. Lin Yuan looked at Chimy, which had stopped in front of him and turned into a giant firebird. Lin Yuan said softly, "Chimy, change back." Originally, Lin Yuan would rarely use Genius and Chimey in a battle. However, during the Radiance 100 sequence selection he was facing the Freedom Federation's envoy group's conspiracy. However, the Radiance 100 sequence selection this time had to face the conspiracy of the Freedom Federation's envoys. Lin Yuan could let Genius and Chimey reveal themselves. Lin Yuan had never revealed Chimey and Genius before. At any time Genius, which had evolved into a sky-knowing destiny beast, and Chimey, which had evolved into a phoenix new sun sparrow. They were both Lin Yuan's absolute trump cards. Lin Yuan's Fey enhancement had come to an end. Unless Lin Yuan became an A-rank spirit chi professional. Otherwise, the Fey's strength wouldn't be able to have a significant increase. However, Lin Yuan had now reached the pinnacle of the Radiant Sect's younger generation. 5 Diamond X/Fantasy V phase. They were even higher than the rest of the younger generation. However, Zhongzhe, Gulang and he and the others had been improving. Zhongzhe, Gulang and he and the others' bloodline of Desolation phase. They had all grown up. Lin Yuan's bloodline of Desolation Fey, Golden Wing wanted to grow up. Still needed at least 1 year. Next, Lin Yuan just had to wait for the Radiance 100 sequence to officially begin. At this moment, somewhere in the main world, a pair of vicissitudes of life suddenly opened on the main seat of the hall. Behind this pair of vicissitudes of life, there was a totem that looked like a copper ring. Chapter 1585. Coincidentally, the clock was in the hall. It resounded loudly. One after another, the bell rang, shaking every corner of the hall. After the bell rang, it was followed by the ticking of the hour hand. The person on the main seat stood up, turned around and looked at the copper totem behind him. He respectfully knelt on the ground. Then he solemnly kowtowed 3 times. After a total of 3 times, the figure who knelt 3 times and kowtowed 9 times stood up and murmured, "Another era has begun. Totem God, you haven't appeared for almost 3,000 years." As he spoke, the figure slowly raised his head. On the copper totem there was a pair of pure and wise eyes. Looking at the pure and wise eyes, the figure hurriedly lowered his head, as if he had committed a taboo. He knelt on the ground and performed the 3 kowtows and 9 kowtows. At this time someone knocked on the dusty door. The figure returned to the main seat. With a wave of his hand, the door was opened from the inside. A man wearing black crystal armor walked in. Seeing the figure on the main seat, the man quickly knelt on one knee. He spoke. "Lord Temple Attendant, the balance of nature has once again tilted towards the east. This time, the tilt of the balance of nature broke the heartstrings that connected number 6 to the balance of nature. Number 6 spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and fainted. He is currently being treated by number 4. Lord Temple Attendant, something that shouldn't exist in this world has appeared in the east. According to number 6 senses, this balance has tilted in just half a year. It has tilted nearly 10 times. As he spoke, the man in black crystal armor. He could clearly feel the pressure around the figure on the main seat becoming lower. A sense of killing intent came. The figure on the main seat didn't pay attention to the man in black crystal armor. Instead, after thinking for a while, he spoke. "Go to the other 3 epic sacred halls and wake up the 3 attendants. The Era Secret Assembly will begin in 15 minutes. Hearing the figure on the main seat, the man in black crystal armor's face suddenly blossomed with a devout and joyful light. "Lord, since the last time our Era Temple..." Before the man in black crystal armor could finish his sentence, he was grabbed by a root-like shadow. She slapped him hard on the mouth. The shadow of the root caused the man in black crystal armor to stumble. The moment he was slapped, the man in black crystal armor knew what was going on. He had committed a huge taboo. At that moment, the figure sitting on the main seat of the hall said in a cold voice, "Number 2, you're overstepping your boundaries. You actually dare to bring up Lord Sage? Every year, we 4 palace attendants only have 1 chance to mention Lord Sage. If Xia and Dong knew about this, don't even think about talking about Lord Saint. Then your current life providence has already been crushed. Remember your identity. You are but a lowly servant of the epic shrine's totem god. Have you forgotten the rules after being in charge of the 2nd totem pole for so many years?" The man in the black crystal armor was the number 2 that the figure on the main seat had mentioned. At this moment he had already conjured his life providence. He placed his fate chart on the ground. His forehead devoutly kowtowed on the life providence. It was as if he was repenting for almost saying the word sage on the tip of his tongue. After kowtowing 3 times and 9 times, his life providence was already stained with blood. The man in black armor stood up and bowed to the figure on the main seat. Then he walked towards the 3 shrines with tightly shut doors not far away. Outside each of the main halls, there were a large number of clocks. These clocks were ticking and spinning. They were measuring different time scales. As the needles spun, it was as if one could be immersed in it. From a baby to a skeleton, it was just a thought. After a quarter of an hour, on the huge round stone table on the altar in the center of the 4 shrines, a bonfire was lit. On the stone table there were dense and complicated lines engraved. These lines, if one touched any one of them, the lines would evolve into densely packed totems. 4 figures shrouded in mist, sitting at the 4 corners of the stone table. The other 36 figures were in groups of 9. They knelt on the ground beside the stone table. Among them was the man in black crystal armor who had just gone to report. Among them, a shadow filled with dense life force in the mist said, "Chio, the 4 of us record the epic separately. When the epic bell outside your hall is rung, it should mean that winter has started to count. You have disturbed the long sleep of the 3 of us for 3 epochs. What do you want?" The figure who was sitting on the main seat of the palace replied, "Spring, I have recorded the time of the epoch correctly. However, something has happened in the east of this world. Many things that should not belong to this world have appeared in this world. We must eliminate these disharmonious existences from the world." In the mist, the figure with a bone-piercing chill said coldly, "Chio, you can make arrangements for this kind of thing. 2,000 years ago, when this epoch began, the Xia epoch has been counted. You have taken over the mission of ruling the epoch. I should have woken up. But now you have disturbed spring. 2,000 years later, if the totem god has not woken up and the sage has not descended, how do you expect spring to not sleep and rest for another 2,000 years? The figure on the main seat just now said in a serious tone. 3,000 years ago, the tower cannon's crimson page, aureole candle page, and purplish page struck the epic bell once. This strike caused the epic bell's time to distort. Just now, I felt the undulations of the totem god's totem. After saying that, the figure who was sitting on the main seat of the main hall did not say anything else. Hearing this, the other 3 figures sitting at the stone table trembled with excitement. Their faces were filled with reverence and sincerity. Spring, who had always been the most steady, looked up at the people kneeling on the ground and ordered. Chun, who had always been the steadiest, looked up at the people kneeling on the ground and instructed. "Immediately head to the east and investigate the situation. Immediately head to the east and investigate the situation." Lin Yuan had a rare moment of leisure these few days. Lin Yuan's sacred source life form, the sacred sword-wielding queen. Although there were no signs of it rising in stars. But now, as he absorbed the world crystal, Lin Yuan had a few new sword skills. Every one of these sword skills was Lin Yuan's trump card. Lin Yuan, who had just finished his lunch, was holding a few music scores. He was teaching Chimey how to sing. To Chimey, this was the happiest thing every day. Nothing was better than learning songs from Lin Yuan. Chimey, whose dream had changed, was no longer addicted to live streaming. It had been 4 days since Chimey's bloodline metamorphosis. It had not been streamed on the star web, not even once. Chapter 1586. This made the fans who waited in Yinin's live streaming room on time every day anxious. When Lin Yuan taught Chimey these songs, Chimey's eyes lit up. Suddenly he felt that he was a little mean. These lyrics were sung by Chimey and materialized through its spiritual songstress skill. The enemy will be subjected to many cruel curses and inhuman tortures. However, Lin Yuan understood one thing. That is, to be lenient to the enemy is to be cruel to oneself. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not have the slightest psychological burden. As for Genius, it had been executing its exclusive skill, Sky-Piercing Tail. Genius' 8 tails fused together and pierced the sky. Genius did not immediately ask the heavens what was going on. Only then would he be able to walk on the path of a Class 5 creation master. He was smart but not stupid. He knew that he wanted an answer from the heavens. He had to pay a huge amount of spiritual energy. And now, Genius' mental strength had yet to be replenished. Even with the rainbow-colored fish robe. It wanted to eat 5,000 fish coats and condense a secondary tail. It would take at least a week. Before condensing the 5 secondary tails, Genius did not intend to ask heaven this question. Otherwise, if they didn't have enough spiritual energy, they wouldn't be able to use it. It needed to consume its original tail. Then his abilities would decrease. Genius knew very well that the Radiance 100 sequence selection was about to begin. Genius, who had never been able to fight for Lin Yuan, was now fighting with all its might. He wanted to showcase his skills during the Radiance 100 sequence selection. Lin Yuan had been in contact with Zhou Xian for the past few days. He stated his intention to establish a breeding base for phoenix species phase. Zhou Xian was just like Long Tao at that time. He immediately agreed. Lin Yuan had given the Coiling Dragon Valley an opportunity. This would allow the Coiled Dragon Valley to have the opportunity to become one of the top 3 factions in the Radiant sect. Long Tao was grateful to Lin Yuan. However, Zhou Xian's gratitude toward Lin Yuan was no less than Long Tao's. It could be said that Lin Yuan had established Zhou Xian, Li Yun and Yao Ji's position as the young family head. This allowed Li Yun Yao Qin to have the golden lotus brocade plant, allowing him to develop quickly. Zhou Xian had been thinking about how to repay Lin Yuan. Zhou Xian felt that his chance had come. In the entire Radiance Federation, there wasn't a faction that specialized in selling phoenix species phase and spiritual ingredients. Zhou Xian had the same idea as Long Tao back then. Once this force was established, it would immediately receive an unprecedented response from the market. The spiritual ingredients produced by phoenix species phase were as rare as those produced by dragon species phase. Even if you have money, if you don't have the connections, don't even think about buying it. Lin Yuan needed phoenix blood and phoenix soul. Furthermore, the chosen phoenix phase ability had to be suitable for Chime. In the end, under Zhou Xian's recommendation, he chose the illusory sound Luan phoenix, a kind of phoenix species fae that the Dawn Cloud birdcage had specially nurtured. The illusory sound Luan phoenix was a rare sound-type phoenix species fae. His ability was to release a sound that would cause people to fall into deep hallucinations. This kind of ability was not considered outstanding in battle. It could only play a supporting role. Therefore, the illusory sound Luan Feng had never been taken seriously by Li Yun Niaokeng. However, compared to Chime's ability, the illusory sound Luan Feng was much more powerful. But it was very compatible. The illusory sound Luan Feng's soul was refined into a phoenix seed and integrated into Chime's phoenix cry. It could strengthen phoenix cry's control. Of course, Chime could not only refine the soul of one type of phoenix species fae as its phoenix seed. Afterward, he could also choose more phoenix species fae's phoenix seeds to supplement them. But at present, the illusory sound Luan phoenix was a type of phoenix species fae. It was enough for Chime to use. Apart from preparing a phoenix seed for Chime, Zhou Xian's eyes lit up. Lin Yuan still had to build a cat garden in the swamp world for Genius. The cat garden's choice of feline faes was not so particular. As long as it was a feline fae with a stronger talent, it would be within Lin Yuan's choice. Lin Yuan called Listen. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was now comparable to a top faction. Listen had set the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's function on luxury resources. However, the entire Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had not abandoned its original business model. On the original foundation, it used the Chamber of Commerce's business model to expand. It harvested a lot of online and offline resources. After knowing that Lin Yuan was looking for feline faes, Listen, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's president, personally supervised. In just 2 days, Lin Yuan had collected 500 exceptionally outstanding feline faes. However, these feline faes were all below bronze grade. This was also Lin Yuan's special request. Only by nurturing faes from a young age could Lin Yuan guarantee their strength and potential. The better the foundation of these feline faes, the stronger their potential. When Genius obtained these feline faes' physique and elemental affinity through its cat swarm ability, it would be able to become stronger. Only then would it be able to become stronger. Lin Yuan finished teaching Chime how to sing. He was originally going to enhance these feline faes. In the end, Lin Yuan's phone rang. He picked up the phone and found that it was Listen. After picking up the phone, Lin Yuan heard Listen's tongue-tied voice on the other end. "Why, young master, you said that someone would use the strange water to trade heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls in the guild. This person is here and the trade is over. It's just that this person won't leave and insists on seeing you. Young master, this person seems to be the Azure Federation's Azure envoy. What should we do?" Lin was currently in the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. She was abnormally nervous and expectant. Just like when Lin was looking forward to being able to see this world clearly. However, the more she looked forward to it, the more apprehensive Lin felt. Lin imagined the person in the starry sky with thousands of laws and willpower entwined around him. What would it be like in reality? However, Lin still had a sense of propriety. No matter how anxious she was, she did not immediately go to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce after arriving at the Radiance Federation. Instead, she secretly ran out alone after visiting the Radiance Federation's lord in the Azure Federation. Upon hearing Lisan's words, Lin Yuan spoke. "Tell her about this. Let her wait for me there. I'll be there in a while." Lin Yuan had already made an agreement with Lin in the Celestial Council. The source-type cocoon demon embryo that Lin had mentioned. Lin Yuan had been thinking about the source-type cocoon demon embryo. To others it was a disaster and regarded as an ominous thing. But for Lu Jia, the cocoon demon embryo was definitely something that could change his fate. With the source-type cocoon demon embryo, Lu Jia's Fei combination no longer had any shortcomings. This time, Lin Yuan did not intend to use colorless paper ability to meet Lin. He planned to meet Lin openly as the Radiance Federation's Lord's disciple. The Freedom Federation's envoys would look for the Azure Federation's envoys to cooperate. The Radiance Federation's side could naturally look for the Azure Federation's envoys to cooperate. During this Radiance 100 sequence selection, the Freedom Federation's envoys would either not cause trouble. Otherwise, Lin Yuan would kill them without mercy. Chapter 1587. Lin Yuan's Fei Carriage. Hu Quan had finished forging it a long time ago. However, there had never been a suitable Fei to pull the carriage. Only then would it work. It was a Fei carriage made of completely jade-textured wood. He had never been able to put it to use. The Moon Empress gave Lin Yuan 12 Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterflies. When Lin Yuan saw the Imperial Armored Martial God insect, a strange insect, his eyes lit up. He decided to use the Royal Armored Martial God insects to pull the Fei carriage. Previously, at the Pinnacle Class 4-dimensional rift in the Coiling Dragon Valley, Lin Yuan had captured the Royal Armored Martial God insect. One of them was a mutated Royal Armored Martial God insect. Black steel wings appeared on his back. This time he went to see Lin as His Holiness Hui Yao's disciple. Although he didn't need to wear the moonlight royal robe that his master, the Moon Empress, had replicated for him, he didn't need to wear it. However, the grandeur that should be said still had to be said. Lin Yuan exited the Diamond Fei storage box. He took out the Fei carriage that he had previously forged. Then he released the Royal Martial God insect in another Diamond Fei storage box. The Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly was controlling the Royal Armored Martial God insects. The Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly had already given the order to the Royal Armored Martial God insects. The Royal Armored Martial God insects listened to Lin Yuan's orders. He wanted these Royal Martial God insects that were like Gundams to be truly obedient. It could steadily pull a Fei carriage in the sky. Lin Yuan still had to release the Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterflies. Otherwise, they would be separated by a layer of space. The Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterflies' control over the Royal Armored Martial God insects would weaken. This mutated Imperial Armored Martial God insect clearly had a higher intelligence than the other Imperial Armored Martial God insects. However, the higher the intelligence, the harder it was to control. The Heaven Fragrance Beauty Butterfly was only a Diamond Fei. It was still a little difficult for him to control the Emperor Armored Martial God insect, which was comparable to a Myth 3 Fei. However, the Mindfulness Whale was here. It could help these Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterflies advance to Myth breed as soon as possible. At that time he could even let the Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly. It could control an alien insect that was comparable to a creation breed Fei. To pull the Fei carriage. In any case, the Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly had switched targets. It was as simple as drinking water. Since this one was eliminated, they could just replace the next one. 12 Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterflies landed on the forehead of the Royal Armored Martial God insect. The 12 Monarch Armored Martial God insects were under the control of the Heavenly Fragrance Beauty Butterfly. He took the initiative to put the lock of the Fei carriage on the inner armor on his back. Immediately after, the Fei carriage pulled by the 12 steel angels also appeared. He arrived directly above the return from faraway manor. 4 pairs of huge black wings instantly condensed behind him. As his wings flapped, he flashed. He entered the Fey carriage. At the same time, a small red spider appeared. It also followed behind Lin Yuan and entered the Fey carriage. This little spider did not take human form. Instead, he jumped onto Lin Yuan's shoulder and said, "Let's go. Little Yuan, when you go out in the future, I will follow you. That way, when I encounter danger, I can also act in time." This crimson-red spider was in its original form. At the same time, he carried out a mimicry of blood. Xianxia had sworn on the sun to become Lin Yuan's protector. He was now fulfilling his duty as a guardian. Actually, even if he was a guardian, there was also no need to guard Lin Yuan so closely. However, Lin Yuan's significance to blood Xianxia, it was simply too important. In addition, it was a troubled time and Xianxia was not at ease to let Lin Yuan go out alone. Apart from the Freedom Federation's envoy who had reached the Radiance, there were likely people in the Tower Cannon's 8 pages. They had already infiltrated the Radiance. Whether it was the Tower Cannon or the Freedom Federation, they were all enemies with the Radiance. Lin Yuan had traveled with such a large force. He was likely to be targeted by the Tower Cannon and the Freedom Federation. If these two parties were shameless and carried out assassinations, if he followed Lin Yuan, he could also help Lin Yuan resist. Xianxia was very afraid that Lin Yuan would be in danger. Because now Lin Yuan was related to whether the Jade Gui could be resurrected. Xianxia had never dared to hope that the Jade Gui could return to his side again. But now Lin Yuan had given him a chance and hope. No matter what, Xianxia did not want to give up this opportunity. Flying Fays or Fey carriages were allowed in the royal capital's sky. However, the grade of the flying Fays was higher than gold. They needed to be specially registered. Fey carriages only needed to be pulled by gold and above Fays. Like flying Fays, they needed to be specially registered. Under normal circumstances, it was rare to use a platinum Fey to pull a Fey carriage. The price of a platinum Fey was already extremely expensive. Nurturing it required a lot of resources. If a platinum Fey was used to pull a Fey carriage, at least 3 would be needed at a time. This was not the same concept as riding a platinum Fey. Therefore, those who rode Fey carriages were generally members of factions. However, even if they were members of the top factions, Diamond Fays were already the limit for those pulling Fey carriages. Most of them were still using Platinum Fays. Therefore, Lin Yuan's Fey carriage was traveling in the royal capital's sky. It was simply too dazzling. The 12 steel angels formed a triangular formation. For in a group. In the blue sky, they flapped their wings and flew. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. Right now, it was the day when the Azure Federation's and Freedom Federation's envoys arrived at the Radiance Federation. The entire Radiance Federation's royal capital was under martial law. The spirit guards were scattered all over the royal capital. In the Radiance Federation, there was a department that specialized in managing Fey carriages and flying Fays. It was called the Transportation Bureau. This department had a large number of transportation bureaux. They were in charge of managing daily trips and registering the Fays pulling the Fey carriages. At this moment, there were already Transportation Bureau on duty. They saw the steel angels soaring in the sky. And the Fey carriages behind these steel angels. Most of the Transportation Bureau were Spirit Chi professionals who had contracted gold Fays. This level of strength was enough to manage transportation. However, these steel angels in the sky were simply too tall and shocking. Although these Transportation Bureau did not know what these steel angels were, they could feel that these steel angels were extraordinary. However, he was able to sense how extraordinary those steel angels were. Each and every one of them had probably surpassed the limits of diamond. Even so, the Transportation Bureau's standard Fey, the Airstream Falcon. They still summoned the Transportation Bureau's standard Fey, the Airstream Falcon. They jumped onto the Airstream Falcon's back. They flew toward this Fey carriage. The heavenly fragrance beauty butterfly could not only control alien insects. It could also use its spiritual energy to simulate the scene outside. It was now inside the Fey carriage. When Lin Yuan saw the Transportation Bureau's people coming over, he immediately stopped the Fey carriage. The Transportation Bureau's people came to the entrance of the Fey carriage and observed these imperial armored martial god insects at close range. They thought to themselves, if these steel angels were not restraining their auras, their Airstream Falcon was probably scared out of its wits. It fell from the sky. Chapter 1588. However, even though these steel envoys were doing their best to retract their auras, they were still unable to move. But the air current falcon was still trembling. Even the traffic guard standing on the back of the Airstream Falcon was unable to stand steadily. Qing Jiawei coughed lightly and said in a deep voice, "Has this Fey vehicle been registered at the Transportation Bureau? Who's sitting in the car?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan opened the Fey carriage's door. The moment the traffic guard saw Lin Yuan, he immediately exclaimed, "Yuan." The traffic guard recognized Lin Yuan. It was all because of Lin Yuan's performance in the All-Star match. This traffic guard was a hardcore fan of the S tournament. Don't support any team. But every match of the S tournament was a must-watch. Even the matches related to the S tournament were not missed. When Lin Yuan saw this traffic guard, he called out his name. He nodded at the traffic guard before replying. This Fey vehicle has been certified by the Transportation Bureau since it was built. It's just a Fey pulling the carriage. We haven't confirmed it yet. I'm going to register now. The guard was rather excited to see Lin Yuan. But he still followed the rules and said, "Only creation masters can make a temporary registration. If you are not a creation master, you will need to register at the Transportation Bureau. Under normal circumstances, the verification of the chariot pulling phase can be done within an hour. It's just that your chariot pulling phase are stronger. I might need to do a thorough check to see if there's any possibility of him suddenly losing control." As he spoke, he guessed Lin Yuan's identity. They thought that Lin Yuan might be from a veteran faction or a top faction. Otherwise, it was impossible to use such a powerful Fey to pull the carriage. On Star Web, people had been guessing Lin Yuan's identity. Qing Jiawei felt that he should wait for him to return. Perhaps he could make a post on Star Web. He should be able to gain a lot of fans. At that moment, the traffic guard heard Lin Yuan say, "That's right. No need to trouble yourself." After saying that, Lin Yuan handed over his Creation Master crest. At first he was surprised that Lin Yuan was so young. He was actually a Creation Master. But when he saw the moon totem on the badge, traffic guard Cheng's hand trembled and he almost dropped his badge. Qing Jiawei had never expected this. Lin Yuan was actually that lord's disciple. And he had even stopped the carriage of that lord's disciple. Under normal circumstances, Lin Yuan only needed to reveal his identity. He could drive the Fey carriage over. Who would have thought Lin Yuan was actually so polite to her? He didn't have any arrogance at all. Qing Chao hurriedly handed the badge back to Lin Yuan and said, "That's right. My lord, please take care." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan bade farewell to the transportation guard. He drove the Fey carriage toward the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan had always deliberately concealed his identity as the Moon Empress disciple. But now he felt that there was no need to hide it anymore. This was because the Radiance 100 sequence selection was about to begin. Facing the conspiracy of the Freedom Federation, he wanted to display his full strength. He definitely had to declare his identity as the Moon Empress disciple. Lin Yuan's Fey carriage had just arrived above the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. He felt a cold aura locking onto his Fey carriage. This aura was very special. It was clearly the aura of a spirit chi professional. But it had the wildness of a Fey. With a single glance, one could tell that this aura was released by an expert with beast marks. Lin was the Azure Envoys of the Azure Federation. Even if it was a secret trip, there would definitely be experts from the Azure Federation accompanying and protecting her. She felt an aura targeting this Fey carriage. Shuaishuo released his aura and pushed back. Just as that aura was about to collide with Shuaishuo's aura, Lin Yuan had already jumped off the Fey carriage. Lin felt the aura fluctuations outside the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. She walked out of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. At a glance, she saw Lin Yuan, who was descending from the sky. The moment she saw Lin Yuan, Lin's expression suddenly froze. She stared at Lin Yuan without blinking. It was not that Lin was surprised by Lin Yuan's appearance. Many people in the Azure Federation's younger generation had awakened beast patterns. Generally, spirit chi professionals who had awakened beast patterns were not ugly. The bloodline of these spirit chi professionals was affected by the bloodline of Fays. Their facial features were close to the bewitching and exquisite of Fays. After Lin had regained her sight, she had also come into contact with such people. Even though Lin Yuan's bone structure, appearance and temperament were very outstanding, It was not enough to make Yinlin lose her composure. The reason why Yinlin had such a reaction, it was entirely because Lin Yuan gave her a feeling that was too familiar. It was so familiar that Yinlin could not help but have a kind of familiarity and dependence. This feeling was similar to that in the center of the stars. His body was entwined with countless shadows of laws and willpower. The aura he emitted was exactly the same. Yinlin quickly stepped forward and came in front of Lin Yuan. Her eyes revealed a childlike look of attachment. She asked softly with a trembling voice, "Is it a lion?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded at Yinlin. Lin Yuan realized that in terms of appearance, Yinlin's appearance was actually not inferior to Su Yiren. It was just that Su Yiren's beauty was too heroic. On the other hand, Yinlin's beauty was that of a scholarly young lady from a noble family. Lin Yuan nodded at Yinlin and said, "That's right. Yes, I am a lion. Come with me to the Fey carriage and have a talk. How about it?" Yinlin could be said to trust Lin Yuan wholeheartedly. There was no defense in her heart. To Yinlin, Lin Yuan was her savior. Yinlin hurriedly nodded and agreed. But Yinlin nodded and agreed. The expert who was secretly protecting Yinlin's safety could not agree. Yinlin was the Azure Federation's Azure envoy. The Azure Cloud Leopard Beast pattern was very important. Before coming to Radiance, the Azure Federation had already collected information about Radiance. Lin Yuan had publicly appeared at the Nyx assembly. Therefore, Lin Yuan's appearance had never been a secret. From the first time they saw Lin Yuan, this Azure Federation expert who was guarding Yinlin recognized Lin Yuan's identity as the Moon Empress disciple. This was originally the Radiance Federation's territory. In the old man's opinion, letting Yinlin and Lin Yuan travel together was not very safe. It wasn't safe at all. Moreover, in this carriage there was an expert whose strength might be higher than his. The old man hurriedly stepped forward and said to Yinlin, "Lord Azure Envoy, according to my perception, there's something on this Fey carriage." "There's another expert. It is really inappropriate for you to get on this Fey carriage." Yinlin glanced at the old man and said, "Uncle Lei, don't worry. Uncle Lei, don't worry. Nothing will happen. Just wait for me here. When I get off the Fey carriage we will go back." Chapter 1589. Yinlin didn't give the old man a chance to continue speaking. He immediately nodded at Lin Yuan. The old man could tell that Yinlin and Lin Yuan knew each other. However, he noticed the way Yinlin was looking at Lin Yuan. The old man stood rooted to the ground. Oh my god. There was definitely something wrong with that gaze. Damn it, what was with that look? Why was there a hint of admiration? Could it be that Lady Yinlin was in love with this young man? It shouldn't be. Lord Yinlin had been blind since he was young and had been raised in the Azure Cloud Leopard clan. He had never come into contact with the outside world. Lord Yinlin's eyes recovered. At the same time he awakened the beast marks of the Azure Clouded Leopard and the spiritual speech White Lion. During this period he did not leave the Azure Federation at all. This was Yinlin's first long journey to Radiance. It was impossible for Lord Yinlin to have any interaction with the Moon Empress disciple. Could it be that Lord Yinlin fell in love with the Moon Empress disciple at first sight? This goddamn pretty boy. How could she be so seductive? Lord Yinlin was simple-minded and had a one-sided understanding of the world. What if he had a love brain? If this brat really talked about feelings with Lady Yinlin? This kid was also the Moon Empress disciple. In the future he would most likely become a Radiance envoy. Even if he did not become a Radiance envoy, he would most likely become a member of the Radiance Light Knights. Such a status was already equivalent to Lord Yinlin's. It should be impossible for him to marry into the Azure Federation. Doesn't that mean that Lady Yinlin will very likely marry to the Radiance Federation in the future? This time Her Excellency Yinlin was the only Azure envoy heading to the Radiance Federation. Although Lord Lonson was following them. However, Lord Yinlin was still the one who had the final say. Yinlin refused to cooperate with the Freedom Federation. They had offended the Freedom Federation. It would be fine if he maintained an absolutely neutral position. However, if Her Excellency Yinlin and the Radiance Federation were to reach an agreement, that would be equivalent to pushing the Azure Federation to the opposite side of the Freedom Federation. It was true that the Azure Federation had been on good terms with the Radiance Federation all these years. However, there was no conflict between the Azure Federation and the Freedom Federation. The world was in turmoil. The Radiance Federation and the Freedom Federation. He had already started wrestling. The Azure Federation was one of the three great federations. Any decision would affect the situation of the origin world. Every decision had to be made with extreme caution. But now Yinlin's thoughts were different. Could they still remain neutral? The elder felt that he should report this matter to Lord Lan Sun. However, Yinlin was an Azure envoy. He had the right to make any decision. The Azure Federation powerhouse's mind was in a complete mess. The more he looked at Lin Yuan, the more he disliked him. However, Yinlin agreed to Lin Yuan's invitation. The old man had no right to interfere. In the end, he could only bow and respond. He stared at the spiritual carriage being pulled by the royal armored martial god bugs. They landed on the ground. Lin Yuan and Yinlin walked in. Then the Fey carriage drove straight into the sky. Furthermore, the expert in the carriage had used his aura to envelop the carriage. This made it impossible for the old man's aura to lock onto the Fey carriage. It was even more impossible for him to find out what they were talking about. There was nothing the old man could do about it. He could only watch helplessly. Sitting in the Fey carriage, Yinlin said softly to Lin Yuan, "Lion, I saw your information on the way here. But I've never thought that you're a lion." In front of Lin Yuan, Yinlin was not restrained at all. For Yinlin, who had not been in contact with many people since she was born, there were very few people that could be recognized by Yinlin. Except for her parents and the maid who had been with Yinlin since she was a child. So far, the only person Yinlin really recognized in her heart was Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan had an extraordinary meaning to Yinlin. The world that Yinlin first saw in the bright stars. It was Lin Yuan's figure that was outlined by will and laws. Lin Yuan had saved Yinlin and added all the colors to her world. Yinlin had always regarded Lin Yuan as an angel in her heart. Therefore, even if it was the first time they met, after confirming that Lin Yuan was a lion, Yinlin did not have the slightest sense of strangeness. Apart from kindness and joy, Yinlin was also very surprised. She did not expect Lin Yuan to look 1 or 2 years younger than her. But at such an age, he was able to win the championship of the Dark Knight Convention. It was enough to show Lin Yuan's talent as a spirit chi professional. And the power of a creation master's talent. Yinlin flipped her hand and took out a spatial equipment unique to the Azure Federation. It was a spatial die. She handed the spatial die to Lin Yuan and said, "Lion, in this spatial die, there are 6 kinds of top-notch mutant waters that I specially collected. Except for the mutant waters that were traded for the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls in the listening heron chamber of commerce. I'm giving these to you alone." When Yinlin was in the Heavenly Body Council, she knew that Lin Yuan needed top-notch mutant waters. Yinlin happened to have them in her hands. At that moment, Yinlin took out these 6 top-notch mutant waters and gave them to Lin Yuan. There was no slightest purpose, nor was it to repay a favor. He simply wanted to give them to Lin Yuan. Just now on the phone, Listen said that Yinlin wanted to trade for those heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. She had already given Listen 3 top-notch mutant waters. Including now, Yinlin had given him 6 top-notch mutant waters. Lin Yuan already had 9 top-notch mutant waters in his hands. The Azure Federation had opened a Class 6 Water World Dimensional Rift. Since the Class 6 Water World Dimensional Rift opened, it was directly controlled by the 12 5-star Azure Federation families. The Azure Federation was not like the Radiance Federation. Her Majesty personally opened the dimensional space. She killed the powerful life forms. In the water world, she created a place that could allow low-level spirit chi professionals to develop. Firstly, it was because the water world was not like the abyss world. It could allow spirit chi professionals to build a city inside. Build a gathering place. Inside the water world, it was all endless seawater. Even with those like the oxygen filter sea anemone phase that could help spirit chi professionals breathe in the water. Spirit chi professionals could not live in it. In the water world, spirit chi professionals could not sleep or rest normally. The water pressure would quickly consume the spirit chi professionals' physical strength. Therefore, after comprehensive consideration, the 12 5-star Azure Federation families, they treated the Class 6 Water World Dimensional Rift as a resource shared only by the 12 5-star Azure Federation families. Only the 12 5-star Azure Federation families would develop it. Therefore, Yinlin could take out so many top-notch mutant waters at once. Now she wanted to improve the quality. She needed to extract the characteristics of the mutant water. To awaken the willpower, Lin Yuan had a huge demand for top-notch mutant waters. Therefore Lin Yuan did not refuse Yin Lin's gift. Lin Yuan thought about it. Yin Lin had just traded the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. However, there was never enough heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Chapter 1590. Lin Yuan took out a large brocade box and handed it to Yin Lin. He did not say what was inside the brocade box. He reached out to take the spatial die that Yin Lin handed over. The effects of the spatial die and the Fey storage box were not much different. However, the spatial die did not have a strong preservation function like the Fey storage box. Objects that had lost their lives were placed inside the spatial die. They would quickly rot. However, the spatial die had an advantage. It was a top-notch spatial die that had more space than the diamond Fey storage box. It also had the ability to connect inside and outside. It could be said that the spatial die could perfectly replace the Dark Seven States disc-shaped spatial equipment. Lin Yuan planned to ask Yin Lin for a few more spatial die later. With the improvement of the Spirit Lock spatial zone, the spirit pool consumed energy ores every second. It was several times faster than before. He used those golden discs to store the energy ores. Even if they were high-grade energy ores. In a month Lin Yuan would have to work hard to fill them up at least twice. The spatial die did not take up space with the golden discs. He would get a few more, fill them with energy ores and throw them at the bottom of the spirit pool. Lin Yuan would not have to worry about the energy ores being insufficient for a few months. It would save him a lot of effort. Lin Yuan took the spatial die that she handed over. Yin Lin's face immediately revealed a smile. She did not stand on ceremony with the brocade box that Lin Yuan handed over. But when Yin Lin opened the brocade box, she was immediately stunned by the flickering light and shadow inside the brocade box. An aqua blue color gushed out of the brocade box. In an instant the Fey carriage was dyed dark blue. Light blue pearls that were the size of fingernails. They flashed with a feeling of suddenly looking back and seeing him in the distance. This feeling made Yin Lin think of the first time she saw Lin Yuan. Xianxia had been in disguise. After Lin Yuan returned to the Fey carriage, Xianxia climbed into Lin Yuan's hair. Xianxia was looking at the brocade box with abnormal surprise. There were nearly 1,000 pearls that contained beautiful water attribute heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. He was amazed at the Moon Empress Creation Master standard and Lin Yuan's generosity. He actually gave away this brocade box of treasures so casually. 6 top-notch mutant waters might be rare. However, as long as one was strong enough, they could explore the Class 5 water world dimensional rifts. He would eventually be able to explore it. However, this brocade box contained nearly 1,000 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Even the Moon Empress would need a long period of nurturing. Consumed a lot of energy. Yin Lin naturally knew how precious this box of heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls was. The higher the purity of heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, the more valuable they were. With the pearl essence, the price could be doubled or even doubled compared to the usual heavenly maiden-level elemental pearls. The grades of the pearls were divided into 4 types: Dreamy Cloud Lake, Tranquil Life, Orchid Shade and Goddess Gossamer. The heavenly maiden-level elemental pearl that contained the goddess gerbils only existed in legends. The pearl was a heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl. This was the highest definition of elemental purity in the world. Yin Lin didn't dare to accept this box of items. Even though Yin Lin was an Azure envoy, he also felt that the item in the box was too precious. Under normal circumstances, 6 top-grade mutant waters could be exchanged. In the Azure Federation he only needed 1/3 of the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls in the box. He would be able to obtain it. Seeing that Yin Lin was about to refuse, Lin Yuan spoke. Take these heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. To be honest, the source-type cocoon demon embryo is very useful to a friend of mine. These 12 cocoon demon embryos are enough to change his life. I'll thank you on his behalf first. Yin Lin hurriedly waved his hand when he heard Lin Yuan thanking him. Lion, I should be the one thanking you. When I mentioned the source-type cocoon demon embryo to you, I wanted to remind you. The Freedom Federation's envoys must have a big plot for coming to Radiance. Since the cocoon demon embryo is useful to your friend, I'll give it all to you now. But if you don't have absolute confidence in using it, you must be extremely careful. After saying that, Yin Lin's hand shook. 12 khaki-colored cocoons appeared in Yin Lin's hand. This thing looked very ordinary. If one accidentally dropped this thing on the ground, no one would think that there was anything special about this thing. Lin Yuan took the cocoon demon embryo that Lin handed over. Then he carefully put it in a wooden box. He put it in his amber button-shaped diamond fey storage box. Because Xianxia did not get off the fey carriage. He did not know that Lin was very familiar with Lin Yuan. But now, seeing the way Lin looked at Lin Yuan, and the way they communicated, Xianxia's heart suddenly tightened. This kid Lin Yuan is too attractive. When he met the Azure Federation's Azure Envoy, he invited Lin Yuan to the Fey carriage for a one-on-one chat. And he was so generous. Nearly 1,000 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls were given away just like that. If Blue Lotus saw these things, she would probably die of greed. Xianxia thought to himself. Not to mention Lin's blood relationship with that silly girl of his. Just based on Lin Yuan's looks and temperament as well as his generosity, no girl would not like Lin Yuan. His daughter's blood relationship was originally a one-sided love. Now there was another opponent. If he did not grasp it tightly, he would not have another chance. Xianxia was worried. But Xianxia could not care about such things. He could not drag Lin Yuan and say it. My daughter likes you. Think about it. Lin Yuan had obtained the cocoon demon embryo. He was going to give Lu Jia a call when he returned to the mansion. There were still 5 days before the Radiance 100 sequence selection. These 5 days were enough for the cocoon demon embryo to play its role. After exchanging resources, Lin Yuan decided to talk to Lin. His purpose of pulling Lin onto the Fey carriage was not just to exchange resources. If it was just to exchange resources, it could be done in the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin, I want to talk about cooperation with you now. You have to be clear that I'm talking about cooperation with you now, not as a lion. I'm standing on Radiance's side. As Her Holiness disciple, I'm here to talk to you. Although Lin treated Lin Yuan as her savior. However, Lin was an Azure Envoy and shouldered the mission of an Azure Envoy. Since Lin Yuan said so and said it so formally, Lin no longer treated her identity as a member of the Celestial Council. Instead, she was standing on the Azure Envoy's side. Lin said very seriously, Lin Yuan, speak. If you stand on the lion's side, I will help you unconditionally. But you stand on the Hui Yao's side and want to talk about cooperation. I must ensure that the interests of the Azure Federation are not harmed. Chapter 1591. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. Lin Yuan really liked Lin's current attitude. Lin showed a clear distinction between public and private affairs. Only then would it be convenient for Lin Yuan to discuss the upcoming collaboration. That was because this collaboration was truly too important. Lin was the only one who was able to distinguish between public and private affairs, without any other feelings. Only then could Lin Yuan feel at ease. Of course. Since it's a collaboration, the ultimate goal is obviously a win-win situation. Lin Yuan's words made the smile on Lin's face bloom instantly. At the same time, Lin looked at Lin Yuan. Another change took place. In fact, this discussion involved the Radiance Federation and the Azure Federation. When the two great federations worked together, Lin was afraid that Lin Yuan would use his identity as a lion to negotiate. Lin was willing to help Lin Yuan unconditionally and repay him. But Lin was an Azure messenger. He carried with him the glory of the Azure Federation and a deep sense of responsibility. If this matter was beyond Lin herself, and the Azure Cloud Leopard clan's own abilities, he needed to use the power of the Azure Federation. Lin found it difficult to choose. If he used the Azure Federation's power to help Lin Yuan, Lin had basically thrown away her responsibilities as an Azure Envoy. He had abandoned the glory of the Azure Federation. The Azure Clouded Leopard clan would never be able to raise their heads in the Azure Federation. Lin Yuan's words made Lin feel Lin Yuan's bearing, and their attitude and style of doing things. Lin had originally been close and attached to Lin Yuan. But now, after Lin Yuan showed such a magnanimous bearing and pattern, he had no choice but to accept it. Lin suddenly felt it was even harder for him to shift his gaze away from Lin Yuan. Lin forced herself to calm down and not look at his glasses. He said, if it's really a win-win cooperation. On behalf of the Azure Federation's diplomatic corps, I agree. Upon hearing Lin's words, Lin Yuan raised his brows. Lin knew why she wanted to cooperate with him. Hence there was no need to waste any words. He directly led the topic to the cooperation itself. At the same time, Lin was also indirectly indicating to him. He had the authority to make decisions in the Azure Federation's diplomatic mission. He could control the will of the entire envoy group. But for now, I can only represent the Azure Federation's diplomatic mission. They couldn't represent the entire Azure Federation. That was the truth. It was true that the Azure envoys had absolute authority in the Azure Federation. However, the Azure Federation was controlled by the 12 Azure aristocratic families. The heads of each of the 12 Azure aristocratic families were equivalent to Radiance's majesty. As a result, Lin, who had just become an Azure envoy, had no choice but to follow her orders. He had yet to participate in the assembly of 10,000 states. He didn't achieve anything at all. This was an important decision that involved the Radiance Federation and the Freedom Federation. Right now, Lin could only give suggestions. He still had the right to make decisions. Lin Yuan did not immediately state his purpose. Instead, she asked Lin. Back then, the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission cooperated with the Azure Federation's diplomatic mission. Even if you refused to cooperate and did not discuss the details with the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission. But what exactly is the goal of the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission? I believe you should be very clear about this. Hearing that, Lin nodded. Without the slightest hesitation. It was impossible for the Freedom Federation's envoy team to make a big move in the Radiance Federation. Things like source-type cocoon demon embryos. The Freedom Federation's envoys didn't have the guts to invest in various parts of the Radiance Federation. If it really erupted, it would be a terrifying tumor phase disaster. The Radiance Federation would investigate the situation. They would immediately think of the fluorescent earthworm disaster that happened in the Freedom Federation. The Freedom Federation's actions would definitely incur the Radiance Federation's Majesty's revenge. The Radiance Federation's Majesty might not be able to quickly stop the disaster. However, they could directly use 10-star and above sacred source lifeforms to trigger a meteorological phenomenon. The meteorological phenomenon would cause a natural disaster to spread throughout the Freedom Federation. The Freedom Federation's Majesty was tightly holding onto their own interests. The Radiance Federation's revenge would cause the Majesty's interests to suffer. This was not what the Freedom Federation's Majesty was willing to see. But even if it didn't cause a big problem. However, during the Radiance 100 Sequences test, the Freedom Federation would definitely propose a friendly exhibition match. During the friendly exhibition match, the Freedom Federation would definitely bare their fangs and kill. Lin received top-secret information. Apart from one Freedom Envoy, the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission to the Radiance Federation, there were also 3 people who had just become independent 100 Sequence members. But they were all favored by the Freedom Federation's Majesty. The Freedom Federation's Freedom Envoy had yet to be selected. It wasn't like the Azure Federation's Azure Envoys, who could add new spots at any time. These 3 people would definitely be the next Freedom Envoy seedlings. Lin thought about this top-secret information for a long time. In the end, she decided to tell Lin Yuan. After Lin understood Lin Yuan's age, she felt that Lin Yuan would most likely participate in the Radiance 100 Sequence selection. Even if Lin Yuan didn't participate in the Radiance 100 Sequence, he would definitely attend the ceremony as Her Majesty's disciple. 3 of the Freedom Federation's young generation's top experts had come. Their goal was definitely not limited to making a move on the 10 newly promoted Radiance 100 Sequence members. They wanted to lure Her Majesty's disciple into the battlefield. This was the Freedom Federation's true goal. Only the death of Her Majesty's disciple, the Radiance Federation's top geniuses. Only the Freedom Federation's 3 pending Freedom Envoys would be worth it. In this kind of situation where everyone was watching, they would really kill the Radiance Federation's young generation. The Radiance Federation's Majesty wouldn't be able to make a move. It was for the Federation's bearing in face. They even had to ensure the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission's safety in the Radiance sect. If the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission's members accidentally killed someone in the exhibition match, but in the Radiance sect's territory, there would be injuries. In the future, there would probably be no more diplomatic missions coming to the Radiance sect to attend the ceremony. She could find out that Lin Yuan was at the Evernight Assembly. The news of first place in both the civil and martial arena. The Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission could also find out. Therefore, Lin Yuan was the Radiance Federation's #1 among the young generation. Naturally, he became the target of the Freedom Federation's envoys. There was a 2-year agreement between the Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation. The stakes of this 2-year agreement were too great. The Freedom Federation couldn't afford to lose a Class 5 Creation Master's path. The Radiance Federation also wouldn't be willing to help the Freedom Federation build the Star Web. In this kind of situation, consuming the strength and number of the opponent's top experts of the young generation, it was undoubtedly the best choice to strike the opponent. It was also a choice that had to be made. Lin Yuan would definitely become the target of the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission. Lin told Lin Yuan this news. It was selfish. It was to let Lin Yuan have a guard in his heart. Otherwise, there was no need for Lin to say such top-secret news. Chapter 1592. After all, the news itself meant that Lin was already standing on Lin Yuan's side. Lin Yuan's eyes flickered when he heard Lin's words. Suddenly, a plan formed in his mind. All of this was within Lin Yuan's expectations. But Lin Yuan did not expect it. Only from the Federation's diplomatic corps, there were actually 3 candidates for the position of Freedom Envoy. Lin Yuan suddenly felt the pressure. In this Radiance 100 sequence selection, there were only 2 disciples. There were only him and Gao Feng, the 2 disciples of His Majesty. Gao Feng was also a support-type spirit chi professional. He was not sure if Gao Feng had been under Lord Cicada Cry for the past few months. How much had he been trained? However, the usefulness of support-type spirit chi professionals was reflected in a team. Lin Yuan and Gao Feng could not be considered a formed team. During the battle, Lin Yuan had to be distracted to protect Gao Feng. Fortunately, Gao Feng had been contracting sacred source life forms recently. Come to think of it, during the battle with the Freedom Federation's envoy, Gao Feng's sacred source life form should be able to come in handy. Every sacred source life form had a function that could not be replicated. The Freedom Federation's 3 disciples were favored by Lord Cicada Cry, even though they were newcomers to the Freedom 100 sequence. But these people were candidates for the Freedom Envoys. Everyone must have contracted sacred source life forms. He only had 2 sacred source life forms on his side. And there were 3 on the other side. He was undoubtedly in a disadvantageous position. Lin Yuan was not afraid of the 3 of them. But in a battle that concerned the reputation and prestige of the Federation, he had to be careful. Because he could not lose this battle. He could not afford to lose. Gao Feng basically had no offensive capabilities. Even if Genius and Chimey had completed their evolution, Princess Sacred Sword Mode had a few more sword techniques. And these sword techniques were full of energy. But Lin Yuan still did not dare to say that he could fight 1 against 3. Since the Freedom Federation wanted to cause trouble, he might as well help it become popular and create an even bigger one. Let them know what it meant to give them a taste of their own medicine. Lin Yuan tilted his head and spoke to Lin in a serious tone. He told her his plan. Lin's eyes widened when she heard it. After a while, Lin came back to her senses and said, "Yuan, are you sure you want to do this? If you do this, I'm afraid that you will become the #1 target of the Freedom Federation." In Lin's heart, they were shocked by Lin Yuan's boldness, madness and decisiveness. He actually dared to make such a decision. After Lin Yuan was done with his plan, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He changed the topic. "Since you said it's a win-win situation, help me when the Freedom Federation proposes a friendly exhibition match. Muddy the waters and lure the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission into the water. Give me another 20 infant elemental shellfish. I can provide you with 500 Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls every month for 2 years. As for the pearls, I can't pick them one by one. However, the number of Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls that contain black willows will not be less than 60%. The spirit chi density in the spirit lock spatial zone was very high. The speed at which the elemental shellfish spat out the elemental pearls increased again. The quality of the elemental pearls had also been enhanced. For Lin Yuan to say such words, he had the confidence. The spirit lock spatial zone had only evolved for a few days. However, in just these 2 days, Yi Qingtong's expression changed. 2 Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls appeared in the spirit lock spatial zone. Furthermore, the pearls spat out by the elemental shellfish contained black willows. There were at least 6 pearls out of 10. It was rather difficult for Lin Yuan to obtain heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls without pearls. When Lin heard Lin Yuan's words, she was shocked again. 20 infant elemental shellfish. For a water swamp kingdom like the Azure Federation, they weren't considered rare items. Lin's spatial dye had plenty of infant elemental shellfish. However, if these infant elemental shellfish were to be used, it wasn't just enough to induce them into the elemental shellfish. Instead, it required a large amount of creation master resources. Only then could the elemental pearls be produced. To produce heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls with pearls that contained black willows, it was already within the capabilities of a Class 5 creation master, providing 500 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls every month. Among them, 300 pearls were black willows. Even a Class 5 creation master would have to spend days and nights concocting the pure spirit fluid. To supply the elemental shellfish, it would require at least 15 days. Could be said that Lin Yuan was giving her a reward. For 2 years, Lin Yuan was lending her half of a Class 5 creation master. 2 years, 12,000 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Even if the pearls weren't at Black Willow's level, it was still a sum that Lin could obtain in a short period of time. Resources that she couldn't even imagine. Lin originally didn't want to accept these resources. But looking at Lin Yuan's expression, Lin finally swallowed the words that were at the tip of her tongue. She and Lin Yuan were talking about cooperation. If she didn't accept Lin Yuan's reward, she wouldn't be using her identity as an Azure envoy to carry out this cooperation. But anyway, Lin was planning to invest these resources into her private faction. This private faction would eventually be crowned with the name of Sky City. It was considered making the best use of everything. She was also using another method to return these resources to Lin Yuan. She was helping Lin Yuan. But when the Freedom Federation's envoy requested to have an exhibition match with the newly promoted Radiance 100 sequence members, she made the Freedom Federation's envoy personally announce that life and death was not an issue. Then she guided the Freedom Federation's envoy to request for the Disciples of Radiance to enter the arena. He was doing this, although she was helping Lin Yuan to complete the plan. But in the eyes of the Freedom Federation's envoy, her actions were undoubtedly equivalent to helping the Freedom Federation's envoy. But in Lin's opinion, it was really a little too dangerous. Although Lin Yuan told Lin the plan, but he didn't expose his identity as black. The Freedom Federation wanted to maximize the purpose of this trip. After recognizing Gao Feng's identity, they found that there was only one disciple of Her Majesty in the arena. They would definitely pull at least one disciple of Her Majesty into the arena. In this case, whether it was La Zongzi, Gu Lang or An He, Lin Yuan and Gao Feng could form a team with them. On one hand, it would let Gao Feng play a role. On the other hand, it would also let the combat power on the arena reach a balanced level. The 3 disciples of Her Majesty of the Radiance Federation against the 3 favored disciples of Her Majesty of the Freedom Federation. If the Freedom Federation's envoy was too greedy and insisted on pulling 2 disciples of Her Majesty, in this kind of situation, Lin Yuan didn't mind fighting 4 against 3. Let the Freedom Federation's envoy suffer the consequences of their own actions. After this battle, his identity as black was destined to merge with the identity of Moon Empress disciple. From then on, there would no longer be black in the world. Or rather, Lin Yuan was black himself. Chapter 1593. Lin was silent for a long time. Baidu search, she looked at Lin Yuan seriously and said, Lin Yuan, the cooperation you proposed. As an Azure envoy, I have no reason to refuse. Speaking until here, Lin paused for a moment. Her tone was filled with unconcealable worry. Lion, are you sure I will cooperate with you as you say? Won't there be any accidents? The Freedom Federation has the guts to send the 3 of them to cause trouble. The 3 of them must have abilities that far surpass the other young generation of the Freedom Federation. In this competition, the slightest move will affect the whole situation. It concerns the 10,000 States Convention 2 years later. I hope you can consider it carefully. Lion, I don't want you to take risks. Lin Yuan heard Lin's words. He knew that Lin was worried about his safety. For the Freedom Federation to send out these 3 experts of the younger generation, it was without a doubt that they had the confidence to do so. But Lin Yuan wanted Lin to cooperate with him. It was also to increase the Radiance Federation's confidence. Because Lin Yuan was carrying Gao Feng. Lin Yuan really did not dare to guarantee that he could fight 1 against 3. But if there could be another disciple to help, Lin Yuan's chances of winning would undoubtedly be higher. Lin Yuan could do other things with confidence, but it involved the entire Radiance Federation's reputation. Lin Yuan would definitely be very careful. As for Yin Lin's worries, Lin Yuan had also thought about it. But the Freedom Federation's conspiracy had been confirmed. He would participate in the Radiance 100 sequence selection as Black. He was already in this game. Of course, Lin Yuan still had a way to go. It was to directly refuse to participate in the Radiance 100 sequence selection. This way Lin Yuan could stay away from danger. But if this was the case, the final result, it could only be Gao Feng and the other newly selected Radiance 100 sequence members. They would be killed by the Freedom Federation's envoy in the friendly exhibition match. This was what Lin Yuan did not want to see. Lin Yuan understood the meaning of the Radiance envoy. The selection to decide to participate in the Radiance envoy began. He already had the determination to use everything to fight for Radiance. I'm afraid the Freedom Federation's plan has already been decided. What you are doing is equivalent to doing me a big favor. When the time comes, it will depend on you. Yin Lin, if the Azure Federation encounters such a situation, I believe that you will also fight to the death for the Azure Federation. Upon hearing that, Yin Lin gritted her teeth. He said, "Alright, Lion, I know what to do." In the end, Yin Lin still couldn't get rid of Lin Yuan. He was only treated as Hui Yao's disciple. When Yin Lin agreed to help Lin Yuan, she had already made up her mind. Since the Freedom Federation was forcing the Republic of Radiance to hold an exhibition match, then he might as well bring the people of the Azure Federation and join in as well. When his eyes recovered, this caused his soul to mutate. His first sacred source life form was a functional one, could block all information. However, his second sacred source life form was completely different. Of the current 5 Azure envoys, if he had to use this sacred source life form, Yin Lin felt that her ranking would rise by at least 1 place. For Hui Yao, Lin Yuan had personally taken the risk. Yin Lin could not interfere. However, Yin Lin could use herself as Lin Yuan's insurance on the battlefield. Yin Lin stood up and said softly, "Lion, I was going to treat you to a meal today. However, the Radiance 100 sequence selection is around the corner. I don't think you're in the mood to eat with me. How about this, after everything has come to an end? Before I leave Hui Yao, let's have a meal together. I don't have enough of those 20 infant elemental shellfish. I'll personally have someone send it to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce tomorrow. We'll meet again on the day of the Radiance 100 sequence selection." After speaking, Yin Lin prepared to leave the Fey carriage. At that moment, Yin Lin heard Lin Yuan's voice. "I'm still in the mood to eat. I have a friend who cooks really well. Before you leave, I'll try to let you eat his cooking. Then I'll introduce Tianqing to you. Let's go, I'll take you to the Spirit Food Pavilion for a meal." The Spirit Food Pavilion is probably the best food in the entire royal capital. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Yin Lin's heavy heart suddenly relaxed. Yin Lin turned to look at Lin Yuan. This gaze seemed to want to remember Lin Yuan forever. After that, Yin Lin took out a conch shell. His finger gently dug into the conch shell. He dug out some transparent paste. Yin Lin smeared this paste on his face. Yin Lin's appearance suddenly became ordinary. After using the paste in the conch shell on himself, Yin Lin handed the conch shell to Lin Yuan and said, "Lion, this is the masquerade demon snail that is abundant in our place. It's a paste refined with the masquerade demon snail's blood as the main ingredient. When smeared on the face, it has the effect of changing one's appearance." In Yin Lin's opinion, Lin Yuan was His Holiness disciple in the Radiance Federation. Given Lin Yuan's identity as His Holiness disciple, it would undoubtedly be very inconvenient for him to go out to eat in public. Take Yin Lin for example. If Yin Lin was in the Azure Federation and casually appeared in a restaurant, it would definitely cause a sensation. Lin Yuan also had a disguise method. Lin Yuan still had a lot of the faceless paper that when you had produced using source paper. However, since Yin Lin had already handed over the masquerade demon snail paste that could disguise, Lin Yuan simply took it. He also dug out some transparent paste from this demon snail. Lin Yuan found that the masquerade demon snail paste did not have the slightest smell. Although it was a paste texture when it just touched Lin Yuan's fingers, there was a tendency to turn into water. Lin Yuan smeared this paste on his face. In a moment Lin Yuan's face changed. At this moment, Lin Yuan's appearance after disguise was completely different from the appearance changed by the faceless paper. When Lin Yuan used the faceless paper, his appearance only became ordinary. However, the masquerade demon snail paste made Lin Yuan's appearance very ugly. Looking at Lin Yuan's appearance after disguise, Lin suddenly thought of the side effect of the masquerade demon snail. The masquerade demon snail paste had the effect of reducing the appearance of girls. When used on boys, it would depend on the boy's appearance. The appearance would decrease or increase the corresponding value. If a man was ugly, he could use the masquerade demon snail paste to make himself handsome. But if a man was very handsome, then the paste of the masked magic snail would turn him into an ugly monster. Seeing this, Lin hurriedly handed Lin Yuan a handkerchief and said, "Lion, I forgot the side effect of the masquerade demon snail paste. You better smear this paste off." Lin did not think that there was anything wrong with Lin Yuan becoming ugly. What Lin Yuan gave Lin was that kind of closeness and attachment. It had nothing to do with Lin Yuan's appearance. And Lin, who had just recovered her vision not long ago. There was no absolute definition of beauty and ugliness. Instant Beast Evolution Quotient. Please bookmark this site so that you can read it online the next time there is an update. Starting to update the mobile version of Do 5. Chapter 1594. Lin would let Lin Yuan wipe off the cream on his face. After all, he was His Majesty's disciple. This kind of disguise was really damaging to the image of His Holiness's disciple. He looked through the reflection of the completely jade-textured wood in front of him. He saw his current appearance. Lin Yuan was rather speechless about his current appearance. When he was rubbing the cream down, he realized something. The paste of the masked conch was only on the surface of the skin. If he wiped off all the paste, his true appearance would immediately be revealed. Although the effect of the disguise was good, however, its durability was extremely poor. It couldn't be compared to the effects of the faceless paper at all. Lin Yuan wiped off the masked conch cream on his face. He might as well let genius transform into an artifact within the spirit lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan took out the mask that genius had transformed into and wore it. He said to Lin, "Come on, let's go eat." Anyway, Lin had changed her appearance. Even if he revealed Black's identity, as Black, he dined with Lin. Lin wouldn't be recognized by anyone. The moment Lin saw Lin Yuan put on his mask, she was stunned. At this moment Lin finally understood. Why would Lin Yuan set up such a trap? This made Lin even more determined to bring the members of the Azure Federation. Determination to participate in the friendly exhibition match. If it was said that the genius participating in the Radiance 100 sequence selection was Black, then there was no way he would be able to defeat Black. It was Lin Yuan. If Lin Yuan's plan was executed well, he would be able to survive. It was truly possible for them to kill the 3 Freedom Federation people who were favored by His Majesty. Lin Yuan had just put on this mask in front of him. Black's identity was revealed. It meant that Lin Yuan trusted him very much. This made Lin smile. Xianxia simply did not know what to say in Lin Yuan's hair. Lin Yuan's invisible flirting was simply too fatal. At that moment, Xianxia saw Lin Yuan suddenly reach out and grab Lin. Then it was Lin Yuan, Lin, and himself. He appeared at the entrance of the Spirit Food Pavilion. Lin Yuan's move immediately let Lin know. Lin Yuan had the ability to teleport. Lin Yuan would reveal his identity as Black in front of Lin. On one hand, it was because Lin had already revealed many secrets to him. Moreover, Lin was a member of the Celestial Council. Lin Yuan was 100% trustworthy. On the other hand, he did not intend to expose Wen Yu's face. The faceless paper wasn't just important to Sky City. It had extraordinary significance to the entire Radiance Federation. It could be said that Wen Yu's source paper was an absolute secret. Lin Yuan naturally could not spread such a secret. Even if Lin was absolutely trustworthy, it was still the same. The more Xianxia looked at Lin Yuan, the more he felt that he was subtly flirting. Xianxia thought to himself, the expert who was secretly protecting Lin. He should still be waiting foolishly under the Fey carriage. Wearing a mask, Lin Yuan appeared at the Spirit Food Pavilion's entrance. It had indeed caused a sensation. However, the commotion was not limited to the people around them. All of them surrounded Lin Yuan. Instead, it caused the surrounding people to discuss wildly. Look. Another person is wearing a silver mask to imitate black. This is the 7th person I've seen today. So what if you see 7? Didn't you see those students in the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Chi Academy? Basically, every one of them has a silver mask. My husband is a Class 3 spirit craftsman. When my girl came home yesterday, she insisted that my husband make 100 silver masks for her. I originally thought that she was going to sell them at the school, but I didn't expect that this stinky girl had joined Black's official fan club. She asked her father to make these silver masks for the fan club's current activity. Did you guys see the duel between Black and Lu Shuang on Star Web? Given the strength that Black has displayed, he can definitely become a Radiance 100 sequence member in this Radiance 100 selection. What kind of expert is Lu Shuang? Black has reached the Sanctuary class on Star Web. If it wasn't for the rule that new Radiance 100 sequence members can only be ranked between 90th and 100th, I think Black can at least reach the top 10. Lin was a little confused. These people were discussing Black, that's right. Black was now in front of these people. These people didn't have any reaction at all. Could it be that Lin Yuan knew how to turn invisible? But soon Lin understood from these people's discussion. She knew what was going on. In order to entertain Lin Yuan specially ordered a few gold dishes. After eating, Lin Yuan teleported through the node. He brought Lin back to the Fey carriage again. Lin smiled like a flower and waved at Lin Yuan. After saying goodbye, she jumped out of the Fey carriage. Just as Lin was about to land, a blue cloud appeared around Lin. These clouds let Lin float in the air. It was as if she was walking freely on flat ground. Lin said to the old man who was guarding her, "Come, let's go back. Let's go back. I have already met the Radiance 100's majesties today. In these few days before the Radiance 100 sequence selection, I have to go into a short seclusion. How about letting Teacher Lon Sun participate in those activities on my behalf?" The old man thought to himself, "Young lady, are you asking me what I want? Or are you arranging things for me? If you want to arrange things for me, can you not use an inquiring tone? How can I be qualified to give ideas in front of you?" After completing the transaction with Lin, the 12 Emperor armored martial god insects that were like steel angels brought the Fey carriage that everyone couldn't help but look up to. They returned to the Return from Faraway Mansion. The first thing they did after returning to the Return from Faraway Mansion, Lin Yuan dialed Lu Jie's number. When Lin Yuan and when you first found out about the source-type cocoon demon embryo, Lin Yuan and when you did not tell Lu Jie about it. This was because they had not seen the cocoon demon embryo with their own eyes and held it in their hands. If he told Lu Jie about it, Lu Jie would definitely look forward to it. But in the end, if there was an accident, if they could not obtain the cocoon demon embryo, Lu Jie's original expectations were great. Then how much disappointment would he be in the future? Therefore Lin Yuan and when you came up with a plan. After obtaining the cocoon demon embryo, they would inform Lu Jie. The call was picked up by Night Leaning Moon. Lin Yuan heard Night Leaning Moon say, "Little Yuan, little Jie is now in seclusion. He is testing the strength of those newly contracted insect-type cancer phase. Little Yuan, little Jie is now in seclusion. You might need to go into seclusion for another 2 days." Night Leaning Moon paused for a moment. Then she said very sincerely, "Little Yuan, I want to thank you for the feather fan you gave me. That feather fan fulfilled my wish for many years." Night Leaning Moon had only thanked 3 people in her life. One of them was the Moon Empress. Night Leaning Moon had forgotten how much she had given to the Moon Empress. How many times had she thanked her? The second person was Iron Prison. Iron Prison had said that she could use the Desolate Bloodline phase. When she transferred her life force to the Moon Empress, Night Leaning Moon thanked Iron Prison. Instant Beast Evolution Quotient. Please bookmark this site so that you can read it online the next time there is an update. Starting to update the mobile version of Do 5. Chapter 1595. The last person was Lin Yuan. Night Leaning Moon had never thought about it. One day he would thank a junior. Furthermore, this person was the Moon Empress disciple. Upon hearing Night Leaning Moon's words, Lin Yuan replied with a smile. "Congratulations, Aunt Yi. If Aunt Yi still needs those black feathers, you can tell me." Night Leaning Moon, who was on the other end of the line, heard Lin Yuan's words. Zhou Xian's expression froze. Night Leaning Moon knew of Lin Yuan's relationship with the mother of Bloodbath. However, he didn't know that Lin Yuan could help resurrect the Jade Gui. Night Leaning Moon was puzzled. When did Bai Feng become so easy to talk to? Didn't that black phoenix cherish its feathers the most? The Night Empress was about to refuse. The Night Empress did not want Lin Yuan to owe the heaven-blessed mansion a favor because of her. However, Lin Yuan's next words made the Night Empress confused. Every time Uncle Bai Feng sees me, he will give me a bunch of feathers. If Auntie doesn't need it, I can only let when you take these feathers. Go make 2 pillows. During this period of time, Lan Lian, Bai Feng, and Xue Shuo, they all lived in the Return from Faraway Manor. Lin Yuan slowly faced Blue Lotus, White Phoenix, and Xue Shuo. He also had a certain level of understanding. Don't look down on the fact that the 3 of them were heaven's chosen spirits, peerless experts of the current era. However, Lin Yuan found that their minds were rather simple. Usually, Xue Shuo had a mild temperament. The feeling he gave Lin Yuan was very similar to Gulang. Lan Lian was like a classical lady who loved to eat tomatoes. He had a strong imagination. He got along well with Wen Yu and Lu Pinru. Later, he decided to discuss it with Wen Yu and Lu Pinru. How was he going to design spirit chi clothing? On the other hand, Bai Feng's mirror never left her hand. When he had nothing to do, he would take out a mirror and look at his own face. He seemed to be very intoxicated. Then he begged Wen Yu and Lu Pinru every day. Design a sturdy fishing net suit for yourself. For Wen Yu and Lu Pinru, making a set of spiritual chi clothing was a piece of cake. Therefore, for the past few days, Bai Feng had received new clothes to wear every day. Xue Shuo was the first to know that Lin Yuan could save Jade Gui. Later on, Lan Lian and Bai Feng also learned about it. Every time Blue Lotus saw him, she would give him a tomato. At first, Lin Yuan thought that this tomato was just an ordinary item. But in his hands, only after using true data to check did he find out. The tomato was formed from a sacred source life form. It had an extremely strong recovery effect. Although it wasn't like the jasmine lily that could regenerate severed limbs. But as long as he was still breathing, he would swallow the tomato. He could instantly recover from any injuries he suffered. Apart from Blue Lotus, who would give him tomatoes every time she saw him, Blue Lotus had given him tomatoes. Every time Bai Feng saw Lin Yuan, she would pinch herself hard. Then it gave Lin Yuan a handful of black feathers. These black feathers contained vast amounts of pure night energy. The power of night was different from pure darkness energy. Bai Feng's feathers were useless to him. Moreover, Bai Feng's hair was shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lin Yuan was really afraid that Bai Feng would send him off. Then he would become bald. Bai Feng was a beauty lover. Lin Yuan found it hard to imagine what would happen after Bai Feng turned into a bald uncle. How sad I am when I look in the mirror. Therefore, Lin Yuan wanted to ask Night Leaning Moon. Did he still want the black feather? When Night Leaning Moon heard Lin Yuan's words, she was immediately swallowed by her own saliva. He choked and coughed. It was something that he had been yearning for decades. Lin Yuan actually wanted to use him as a pillow. Night Leaning Moon had to admit that her heart was sour. Night Leaning Moon realized that she had interacted with Lin Yuan a few times. Except at the beginning in Indigo Azure City. She had seen the heavily injured Lin Yuan in the upgraded Waterworld Dimensional Rift. She had felt that Lin Yuan still looked like a young man. But in the next few encounters, Lin Yuan had saved the lives of tens of thousands of creation masters in one time. He had manipulated the sinful Diwanmi. He had allowed the Radiance to have a 4th Class 5 creation master. Now Lin Yuan could also obtain resources that other creation masters couldn't. How could such a Lin Yuan still look like a young man? As for whether or not she owed Lin Yuan a favor, Night Leaning Moon didn't want to think about it anymore. He had long since owed a favor to someone. Lin Yuan had saved tens of thousands of creation masters. The entire Radiance owed Lin Yuan a favor. Night Leaning Moon pursed her lips and said softly, "Little Yuan, these black feathers are very useful to me. Little Yuan, these black feathers are very useful to me. At night, thank you in advance." Although Night Leaning Moon had accepted Lin Yuan's gift, however, Night Leaning Moon remembered this favor in her heart. If he had the chance in the future, he would definitely return the favor. Night Leaning Moon suddenly thought of Lin Yuan's call. It was to find Lu Jia. He asked, "Little Yuan, why are you looking for little Jia? If there's anything I can call him." Night Leaning Moon's words were actually just a casual remark. At this moment, No one knew about the diplomatic mission of the Freedom Federation. What kind of wicked idea was he planning? Therefore people like Lu Jia Zhongzhe and He Gaofeng and Gu Lang. Everyone was desperately trying to improve their strength. Night Leaning Moon knew that Lin Yuan was a person with a sense of propriety. At this time, no matter how important the matter was, he had to prioritize improving his strength. Thus, Night Leaning Moon had never thought about it. Lin Yuan would really let her call him Lu Jia. At that moment, Night Leaning Moon heard Lin Yuan speak in a serious tone. Auntie, please call Lu Jia. When you and I obtain something that will be very helpful to Lu Jia. This thing isn't just Lu Jia's good fortune. It is more likely for Lu Jia to personally create a legend. This way it will save time. I'll make a trip to the land of spirit suppression. Send the thing over to Lu Jia. Night Leaning Moon was startled when she heard this. She started to guess what kind of good fortune Lin Yuan was talking about. Lu Jia had already walked on a path that no one else had taken. But if Lin Yuan obtained a special insect-type carcinoma Fei, it didn't matter how strong the insect-type carcinoma Fei was. To Lu Jia it could only be considered an improvement. It wouldn't be considered as Lu Jia's good fortune. Night Leaning Moon couldn't think of it even with her own knowledge. What was the thing that Lin Yuan mentioned that would be helpful to Lu Jia? What exactly was it? However, when Lin Yuan came later she would know everything. Night Leaning Moon said, Little Yuan, I will personally pick you up at the Iron Chain Bridge in the land of spirit suppression. At night if you are not busy. Why don't you stay for a meal at the land of spirit suppression? Tomorrow, there will be a 2-day Imperial Court conference. 5 days later I will be on the stage. I will be watching your performance during the Radiance 100 sequence selection. Lin Yuan had always wanted to bring his master, the Moon Empress, to do something. When the Mother of Bloodbath awakened the favored spirit bloodline, the Crescent Moon Sai card broke. Lin Yuan discovered that his master, the Moon Empress, had the ability to control the dimensional world's moon. She had the ability to control the dimensional world's moon for her own use. Chapter 1596. There was a purple moon in the swamp world. Lin Yuan had planned to bring his master, the Moon Empress. He planned to go to the swamp world to collect the purple moon. She must have mastered the purple moon in the swamp world. His master, the Moon Empress, had mastered an extra moon. His strength should have increased as well. The Radiance 100 sequence selection. Listening to Blood Beginning, Blue Lotus and White Phoenix's words. There would be 2 8-page pagoda cannon coming to Radiance. Blood Beginning, Blue Lotus and White Phoenix. They wanted to kill these 2 8-page pagoda cannon members in Radiance. This was equivalent to a clash between the world's top factions. Lin Yuan felt that his master, the Moon Empress, had become stronger. She would also have a better grasp of the situation. Lin Yuan immediately declined Night Leaning Moon's invitation. At night, if there is a 2-day Imperial Court conference tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, I will look for master tonight. I have something to do. Wait until I am selected for the Radiance 100 sequence and get a ranking. I will go to Aunt Night's place and have a good meal with her. Night Leaning Moon did not force Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan went to look for the Moon Empress. He must have something important to do. However, Night Leaning Moon felt a little upset. This year's Radiance 100 sequence selection. It was glory for those who were selected. However, this glory was accompanied by risks this year. Take Lin Yuan for example. Lin Yuan was not even 19 years old. He had just come of age and was about to compete. Under everyone's gaze. He was fighting for the glory of the Radiance 100 sequence. Every one of these little fellows was full of vigor. They were improving themselves. According to Cicada, Gao Feng seemed to have formed a contract with an incredible sacred source life form. Cicada Cry had always been pragmatic. Since he praised his disciple, Gao Feng's sacred source life form. The sacred source life form's ability must be very powerful. Night Leaning Moon took a deep breath and said, After the Radiance 100 sequence selection, Aunt Night will prepare the ingredients. Let Yusha show you in Little Jia. Cooking had always been Night Leaning Moon's sore spot. In order to learn how to make porridge for the Moon Empress, she had specially looked for Chef Supreme. As a result, she had accidentally set fire to the kitchen fragrance palace. It was because of this that Supreme Chef and Night Leaning Moon unilaterally became enemies. For a full 5 years he had not spoken a single word to Night Leaning Moon. Cooking was a skill that Night Leaning Moon could never learn. However, the right stinger perfectly made up for this. Night Leaning Moon felt that even though Zhi Yu's cooking couldn't compare to Lu Jie's, it was still very good. But it wasn't any worse than the kitchen fragrance palace. After hanging up the phone, Lin Yuan executed the ethereal jellyfish's ability, node teleportation. In a flash, he arrived at the edge of the land of suppression. The ethereal jellyfish's current strength had reached Diamond X/Legend. Although there were no signs of him comprehending a willpower rune. However, the ethereal jellyfish already had thousands of tentacles. Every time a tentacle was broken, a space walnut would be consumed. The ethereal jellyfish could do it within 2 days. Grow new tentacles. In other words, if Lin Yuan wanted to, he could obtain more than 2,000 tentacles every 2 days. After obtaining such a large number of tentacles, he was no longer as cautious about using these tentacles as before. It could be said that right now in the entire Imperial City, there was no place that he could not teleport to. It was just that this was Lin Yuan's first time coming to the land of suppression. To show respect, Lin Yuan walked toward the inside on foot. On the surface, the land of suppression was not guarded. But it was unknown how many guard envoys were in the dark. They paid attention to the land of suppression. These guard envoys all knew Lin Yuan. If it was another person who wanted to step into the land of suppression, they would definitely be stopped and investigated immediately. Lin Yuan found that inside the land of suppression, there was basically no decoration at all. Everything was the simplest furnishings. Everywhere was filled with the smell of iron and blood. He walked all the way to the iron chain bridge. Lin Yuan saw Night Leaning Moon standing in the middle of the iron chain bridge and looking at him. The spring breeze was faint. Under this faint spring breeze, the chain bridge was shaking violently. Of course, all this did not affect Lin Yuan at all. The guard sand quietly appeared under Lin Yuan's feet. According to the shaking of the chain bridge, it would automatically level under Lin Yuan's feet. Therefore, no matter how the chain bridge shook, every step Lin Yuan took was no different from walking on flat ground. Of course, even without these guard sand, Lin Yuan was still not afraid. Back then, he had obtained this movement technique from the body transcending memory grass. Even if this chain bridge shook 10 times, Lin Yuan could still walk forward steadily. After Lin Yuan walked close to Night Leaning Moon, Night Leaning Moon looked like she was seeing a familiar junior. She gently patted Lin Yuan's shoulder and said, "I have already informed little Jie in advance. It is because of the side effect of that insect-type carcinoma Fei. The spirit power in little Jie's body has been overdrawn. Therefore he could not come with me to pick you up. However, when you arrive at the land of suppression, little Jie will be able to recover from the overdraft of spirit qi." Night Leaning Moon did not tell Lu Jie Lin Yuan could bring something that could transform it. She only told Lu Jie that Lin Yuan was coming to see him. Night Leaning Moon did not expect. Her silly disciple was actually so happy that he stopped the proliferation of the spirit-burning gluten. Once the proliferation of the spirit-burning gluten stopped, the spirit qi extracted from the spirit-burning gluten had to be returned. Thanks to her silly disciple, only 500 spirit-burning gluten had been produced. If 2,000 of them had suddenly stopped in the middle of proliferation, it would have been impossible to recover without lying down for 4 hours. Lu Jie had always worked hard to be Lin Yuan's retainer. In the beginning, Night Leaning Moon always felt that Lu Jie's goal was to rely on one person. It was too similar to her in the past. If there was a problem with the person he relied on in his heart, then the faith in his heart would collapse. It was possible that his life would no longer progress. But now Night Leaning Moon felt such a path and faith. It was not a bad thing for Lu Jie. Just like the person she wanted to follow to her. It was not a bad thing. Lin Yuan walked beside Night Leaning Moon and pondered for a moment. He reached out and took out a source-type item, the Cocoon Demon Embryo. He handed it to Night Leaning Moon. "Aunt Yi, take a look at this sacred source life form. Can it give Lu Jie a chance to become a legend just like I said?" Night Leaning Moon was a pinnacle class 4 creation master. Due to her talent, she could not progress after becoming a pinnacle class 4 creation master. She could not find the path to become a class 5 creation master. Night Leaning Moon was already satisfied with all of this. Anyway, Night Leaning Moon was also a pinnacle class 4 creation master. She might not be stronger than Night Leaning Moon. In terms of creation master talent, she was not inferior to Night Leaning Moon. That was enough. Therefore, Night Leaning Moon immediately saw the function of the source-type item, the cocoon demon embryo. At this moment, Night Leaning Moon's body. She suddenly trembled. It was a blueprint that made even Night Leaning Moon's hair stand on end. It instantly unfolded in front of her. Chapter 1597. Lu Jie would walk on this path. This was what Night Leaning Moon had arranged for Lu Jie after accepting him as her disciple. Night Leaning Moon came up with the idea of turning Lu Jie into her ultimate weapon. The inspiration came from the Night Centipede Squad, which was under the command of the 7th page of the Tower Cannon War. Insect-type carcinoma phase might be able to create disasters. But it was also a war resource. It was just that it was difficult for ordinary people to master it. Lu Jie's fairy source-type insect queen had mutated. The mutated insect queen had the ability to contract insect-type carcinoma phase. As the strength of the insect queen grew stronger, Lu Jie could use the insect queen to indirectly control these insect-type carcinoma phase. However, Lu Jie didn't go far on this road. Night Leaning Moon discovered a flaw. The insect queen's strength could indeed increase along with his spirit chi professional rank. And it kept improving, breaking through to the Genesis creation realm and reaching the immortal realm. Perhaps even achieving eternity. It wasn't impossible. However, due to the insect queen's intelligence, those insect-type carcinoma phase controlled by the insect queen were able to control them. In the end, it could only stop at Diamond X/Legend. This was because the insect-type carcinoma Fae had chaotic intelligence. It was not enough for the insect-type carcinoma Fae to comprehend a willpower rune. In fact, in the past, before the spirit guards had banned all carcinoma Faes, some forces would use spirit materials that could increase one's psychic power and soul power. It had been feeding the carcinoma Fae for a long period of time. This method was indeed able to restore the original chaotic consciousness of the carcinoma Fae. A low level of intelligence. However, a cancer Fae with low intelligence would not be able to survive. Ordinary methods could no longer be used to control it. An uncontrolled carcinoma Fae would definitely become the source of a disaster. The Radiance Federation had also experienced such a disaster because of it. That was why they had banned all carcinoma Faes. Thus, Night Leaning Moon had originally believed that Lu Jie could only contract more and more Diamond X/Legend insect-type Faes. He had never thought that Lu Jie could control an insect-type carcinoma Fae. It could break the original restraints. He was heading towards the fantasy and mythical species. Now that he had this cocoon demon embryo. After letting the insect queen carry out the contract, Lu Jie could use the insect-type carcinoma phase that he controlled. He chose the one with the strongest overall strength. Let the insect-type carcinoma Fae fuse with the source-type cocoon demon embryo. To put it bluntly, an insect species carcinoma Fae that had fused with a cocoon demon embryo. It had transformed from a carcinoma Fae into a source-type life form. Night Leaning Moon was able to obtain this opportunity for Lu Jie. And happy times. Lin Yuan continued to speak. Auntie, I have a total of 12 cocooned demon embryos. There might be some risks in letting an insect-type carcinoma Fae fuse with a cocoon and transform into a demon embryo. At that time, I'll need you to look after Lu Jie from the side. After saying that, Lin Yuan took out the remaining 11 cocoon demon embryos. He passed it to Night Leaning Moon. Night Leaning Moon looked at the 12 earthen yellow demon embryos in Lin Yuan's hand. His eyes almost popped out of his sockets. A cocoon demon embryo was enough to be regarded as Lu Jie's fortune. 12 cocoon demon embryos were in his hands. Night Leaning Moon could no longer estimate Lu Jie's future. Before obtaining the source-type cocoon demon embryo, Lu Jie was the ultimate weapon. After obtaining so many source-type demon embryos, the demon embryos would not be able to survive. Lu Jie would become the Lord of Calamity. He could casually create a natural disaster caused by an insect-type carcinoma Fae. Night Leaning Moon had accepted Lu Jie as her disciple. She had already regarded Lu Jie as her successor. Night Leaning Moon was not very good at expressing herself. But compared to the Moon Empress' kindness to Lin Yuan, Night Leaning Moon's kindness to Lu Jie was not bad at all. Lin Yuan had not only given her a fortune. He had also given her disciple a fortune. Night Leaning Moon took the cocoon demon embryo that Lin Yuan handed over. She said very sincerely, "Little Yuan, as long as it doesn't harm Hui Yao in the future. If you want to do anything, you can tell Auntie. Auntie will support you unconditionally." Lin Yuan was stunned when he heard Night Leaning Moon's words. Then he smiled brightly. Aunt Yi Lujia and I are brothers. You are my elder. I really don't dare to accept what you said. Chaos is coming. The stronger Aunt Yi becomes, the safer Hui Yao will be. Hearing Lin Yuan's words, Night Leaning Moon knew what Lin Yuan meant. He did not intend to ask her for help in the future. That was indeed the case. The Moon Empress' strength had broken through and her lifespan had recovered. With the Moon Empress around, it was not her turn to help Lin Yuan. But whether Lin Yuan needed it or not was another matter. Night Leaning Moon had already said those words. Even if Lin Yuan did not need it, Night Leaning Moon would remember it in her heart. She was prepared to talk about it in the future. She held the 12 cocoon demon embryos in her hand. Night Leaning Moon felt that her entire hand was a little heavy. When Lu Jie's insect queen contracted these cocoon demon embryos, when it became a humanoid calamity, Lu Jie would become the most terrifying person in Hui Yao's group compatibility. Even if Her Majesty used the sacred source life form to display the phenomenon, the ability to destroy a continent, she would not be Lu Jie's match. Lu Jie's faith was in Lin Yuan. Night Leaning Moon felt that if she really placed Hui Yao and Lin Yuan in front of Lu Jie, let Lu Jie choose, Lu Jie was likely to choose the latter. In other words, if one day something happened to Lin Yuan, Lu Jie would definitely go berserk. The cocoon demon embryos were very important. It was so important that Night Leaning Moon felt that it should be at the Imperial Court's meeting tomorrow. She had to properly discuss this matter. Night Leaning Moon thought of the Freedom Federation's fluorescent earthworm incident. At that time, it had guided the fluorescent earthworm to become a myth breed. It was said that it was a source-type life form of the Freedom Federation. Lin Yuan held these cocoon demon embryos in his hand. Could it be the same source-type life form that caused the Freedom Federation's fluorescent earthworm to mutate? Night Leaning Moon felt that she had to clarify this matter. Little Yuan, where did you get these cocoon demon embryos? Lin Yuan pondered for a moment when he heard that. Then he told her what Yin Lin had told him. He told Night Leaning Moon everything. When Night Leaning Moon heard this, her eyebrows tightly wrinkled. However, the Radiance Federation's holiness had already thought of these things that Lin Yuan had said. This matter concerned the Radiance Federation's reputation. The Freedom Federation was going to conduct this friendly exhibition match. The Radiance Federation had to accept it. Regarding the information that Lin Yuan had just revealed, Night Leaning Moon was also prepared to bring it to the Imperial Court's meeting tomorrow. She wanted to properly discuss it with the other holiness. However, Night Leaning Moon did not expect Lin Yuan could actually get in touch with the Azure Federation's Azure envoy Yin Lin. Yin Lin could refuse the cooperation of the Freedom Federation's envoy. She even gave the source-type cocoon demon embryos to Lin Yuan. It was enough to show that the relationship between Lin Yuan and Yin Lin should be good. Night Leaning Moon did not think about other aspects. After all, the Radiance Federation did not have the tradition of marriage. Chapter 1598. Only then did Lin Yuan and Night Leaning Moon walk into the land of spirit suppression. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The pale-faced Lu Jie was already standing at the door. Lu Jie's eyes lit up. Then with a worried look on his face he quickly walked over and said, Lin Yuan, after the end of the Radiance 100 sequence selection, it will be very dangerous. At that time I will be your retainer and fight alongside you. Night Leaning Moon replied immediately. Nonsense. When the Creation Masters were in a life-and-death duel, he could indeed ask for help from his retainer knights. However, the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission was using the guise of a friendly competition. In such a situation Lin Yuan might be a Creation Master. It was also impossible for Lin Yuan's retainer to enter the arena. Lu Jie had always been a steady person. However, once it involved Lin Yuan's safety, they would immediately panic. Night Leaning Moon said, Little Yuan knows more than you do. How about this? I'll think of a way. When the Freedom Federation brings up the exhibition match, strive to give you a chance to go on stage. As she spoke, Night Leaning Moon transformed the 12 cocoons into demon embryos. He handed all of them to Lu Jie. This is Little Yuan's good fortune for you. Little Jie, I only have one request for you now. While saying this, Night Leaning Moon's expression became incomparably serious. Lu Jie stared blankly at Night Leaning Moon's expression. In Lu Jie's impression it was the same. Qingyue had never spoken to him with such an expression before. Lu Jie said hurriedly, Teacher, please speak. Night Leaning Moon looked deeply into Lu Jie's eyes. Then he sighed and said, "Little Jie, with your current temperament, you are not suitable to be a Radiance Envoy. Compared to the Radiance Envoys, I'm more suitable to be a member of Lin Yuan's Radiance Knights." Night Leaning Moon paused for a moment. Then he said word by word, "If there really is such a day, I hope that no matter what, you will not do anything to harm Hui Yao." Lu Jie's eyes widened upon hearing Night Leaning Moon's words. He did not understand why his master would say such a thing. Lu Jie had never thought of harming Hui Yao. Hui Yao had always been Lu Jie's target of protection. However, the first half of Night Leaning Moon's sentence was rather strange. Lu Jie heaved a sigh of relief. To be honest, ever since Lu Jie became Lin Yuan's retainer, Lu Jie was only thinking about how to protect Lin Yuan. Being a Radiance Envoy was not one of Lu Jie's goals in life. Compared to the Radiance Envoys, being one of the 2 members of the Radiance Light Knight Legion that belonged to Lin Yuan was more important. This made Lu Jie even more fascinated. Lu Jie knew that his master was Night Leaning Moon. He had always had high hopes for himself. Lu Jie didn't know how to break the news to Night Leaning Moon. Now that Night Leaning Moon had taken the initiative to bring it up, Lu Jie felt more at ease. Lu Jie knelt on the ground with a solemn expression. It was the same as when he had taken Night Leaning Moon as his master. He said in a deep voice, "Teacher, I will never do anything to harm Hui Yao in my entire life." Night Leaning Moon helped Lu Jie to his feet. He said, "Jie, your mutation started with the Blade Queen Bee," Vivian said. "I suggest that you let the Blade Queen Bee use your first cocoon demon embryo. The Blade Queen Bee's strength has transformed, and the effect of the mental toxin will increase. The mental toxin is the root cause of the Insect Queen's mutation. The Insect Queen has always responded to the Blade Queen Bee's mental toxin. Maybe the Blade Queen Bee's venom can make the Insect Queen's bloodline mutate again. It will increase from the current 4 wings to 6 wings." Night Leaning Moon was Lu Jie's master. She had already made the most suitable choice for Lu Jie in her heart. Before Night Leaning Moon accepted her disciple, she felt that apart from Hui Yao and the Moon Empress, other things had nothing to do with her. But now Night Leaning Moon realized that she had changed. She didn't know when it started. Lu Jie's position in her heart was infinitely close to the Moon Empress. She could even be on equal footing with the Moon Empress. Night Leaning Moon could risk her life for the Moon Empress. She could do the same for Lu Jie. Since she was young, she had been inseparable from the Moon Empress. It was the same for her disciple and Lin Yuan. It was like a reincarnation. Night Leaning Moon could no longer protect the Moon Empress. After the Moon Empress broke through, she was stronger than her. Night Leaning Moon only hoped that she could nurture Lu Jie well, so that Lu Jie would not be like her in the future. He couldn't protect the person he wanted to protect. Lu Jie had just heard from Night Leaning Moon. She could arrange for him and Lin Yuan to fight side by side against the Freedom Federation's envoy. Lu Jie's heart immediately calmed down a lot. No matter what the situation was on the battlefield, even if he couldn't protect Lin Yuan, could also be like before in the upgraded Waterworld Dimensional Rift. He could use his body to block in front of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan didn't stay in the land of spirit suppression for long. Lin Yuan had nothing to do now. He was just waiting for the Radiance 100 sequence selection. He was going to have a good fight with the Freedom Federation's envoy. But now was the main time for Lu Jie to increase his strength. If he grasped the time tightly, within these 2 days the cocoon demon embryo would be able to increase Lu Jie's strength. He would be able to ascend a big step. While Lu Jie went into seclusion, Lin Yuan went straight to the Radiant Moon Palace. As soon as he arrived at the Radiant Moon Palace, Lin Yuan saw his master, the Moon Empress. She was holding a little rabbit and sitting by the lotus pond. She looked at the surface of the lotus pond that was stirred by the spirit siphon goldfish. Sensing Lin Yuan's arrival, the Moon Empress stood up and said, "Cold Moon will bring Chu Ci back today. I haven't seen Chu Ci for some time. I heard from Cold Moon that her strength has increased by a lot. You came just in time. Let's go to the mountain with Master to pick some fruits. Speaking of which, I also miss Cold Moon's cooking." As one of the 2 Moon Envoys, Cold Moon had always been taking care of the Moon Empress' daily life. She would only occasionally go out. But since Cold Moon accepted Chu Ci as a disciple, he brought Chu Ci out to train. She didn't have much time to stay in the Radiant Moon Palace. Lin Yuan would basically call Chu Ci every day. Naturally, he knew that Zhou Xian was coming back today. Lin Yuan missed Zhou Xian very much. But now Lin Yuan had something more important to do. Lin Yuan spoke softly to the Moon Empress. Master, when the crescent moon Sai card you gave to the mother of Bloodbath broke, the crimson moon that appeared should be the moon of the abyss world, right? The Moon Empress did not hide anything from Lin Yuan. My sacred source life form is called moon feeding. One of the functions of moon feeding is to control the moon for one's own use. The Moon Empress had always been very private. In the entire Radiance Federation, even Night-Leaning Moon did not know what the Moon Empress' sacred source life form was called. This was the first time the Moon Empress had said the name of her sacred source life form. Lin Yuan smiled and said, Master, I should be able to give you a green moon. Master, then I should be able to give you a green moon. Instant Beast Evolution Quotient. Please bookmark this site so that you can read it online the next time there's an update. Starting to update the mobile version of Do 5 Smiley Face. Chapter 1599. Xian Moon. In every dimensional world there was a moon that belonged solely to that dimensional world. It was like the crimson moon of the abyss world. It had already been devoured by the Moon Empress' sacred source life form, Feeding Moon. He became one of the Feeding Moon clansmen. What Feeding Moon devoured was not all the energy of the celestial body. Instead, it occupied the body of the moon. According to the source of the body, he was able to create his own energy. This was the only way for Moon Roar, which was being controlled by the sacred source life form Moon Nurturing. Only then could they truly be used by the Moon Empress. Thus, even if the Moon Empress took away the Crimson Moon in the Abyss World, she would not be able to do so. The original power of the Crimson Moon remained in the Abyss World. The dimensional creatures of the Abyss World couldn't see the Crimson Moon in the sky. He could no longer use the Crimson Moon to measure time. But the Abyss World did not disappear because of the Crimson Moon. And there were no effects. The interior of the dimensional rift was a projection of the dimensional world where the dimensional rift was located. Blue Moon's dimension was the swamp world. At the thought of this, the Moon Empress expression froze. Within the borders of the Freedom Federation, a Class 6 dimensional rift had opened. Wasn't it the swamp dimensional rift? Lin Yuan said that he would give him a green moon. Could Lin Yuan have a way to enter the swamp world? It could be said that it was the most suitable world for human development. It was the swamp world. The Class 6 Abyss dimensional rift opened by the Radiance Hole was connected to the Abyss world. It is possible to build mirror cities inside. However, the land of the Abyss was not suitable for agriculture and animal husbandry. Only fire attribute phase or fire attribute plant species phase. Only then could they survive. Of course, the environment of the Abyss world was very beneficial to fire attribute phase. It was an absolute treasure trove. By due search, however, the swamp world could grow any plant phase. Although in the swamp world, fire-type plant phase would not be enhanced by the natural environment. But the swamp soil produced in the swamp world could perfectly make up for this. The Class 6 Swamp Dimensional Rift opened by the Freedom Federation. It was 2 years earlier than the Class 6 Abyss Dimensional Rift in the Radiance Federation. In these 2 years, the Freedom Federation had been in a state of chaos. With the development of the swamp world, they achieved extremely rapid development. Even though there had been a few incidents similar to the death of the fluorescent earthworm. The land was polluted by the fluorescent earthworms. They wouldn't be able to plant anything for decades. But by using the swamp world, the Freedom Federation was able to get through this easily. The Class 6 Swamp Dimensional Rift had always been treated as the Freedom Federation's #1 secret ground. The Freedom Federation wasn't like the Radiance Federation. Build a mirror city in the swamp world. It would expand the Spirit Chi professionals' activity space. The Freedom Federation's Majesty had tightly controlled the Class 6 Swamp Dimensional Rift. Then the people were allowed to make their choice. Would he live in the main world or through the Class 6 Swamp Dimensional Rift? Heading to the swamp world to live. No matter which choice he made, he would not be able to change it. Once he chose to enter the swamp world, they would never be able to leave the swamp world. Through this method, a large number of the Freedom Federation's territories had been established. Those who had been affected by major events and those Spirit Chi professionals who weren't living their lives well. He found a new place to go. The Freedom Federation's Majesties used this method. A third of the Freedom Confederation population. They moved to the swamp world to live and explore. Under such circumstances, no one would want to be under the watchful eyes of the Freedom Federation. Through the Class 6 swamp dimensional rift, they entered the swamp world. It was an impossible task. At the edge of the Class 6 swamp dimensional rift, the temple attendants were exchanging resources. Every one of them was a true confidant of the Freedom Federation's majesties. For this, the Freedom Federation had specially invited nearly 100 Class 5 spirit craftsmen. They used myth-breed spiritual materials to develop a large-scale spatial storage equipment. Every time they exchanged resources from the Freedom Federation and the swamp world, they only needed 3 pieces of such spatial equipment. Therefore, the Moon Empress had never had any ideas about the swamp world's moon. In fact, apart from the swamp world, the Moon Empress had never had any ideas about other dimensional worlds. The only way to enter a dimensional world was through a Class 6 dimensional rift. After the Class 6 dimensional rift opened, it wouldn't be discovered within a year and reinforced with high-grade spatial spiritual materials. It would slowly disappear. Any federation in the main world that had the ability to control a Class 6 dimensional rift, there would definitely be Class 5 creation masters in the federation. Such a federation would never allow the Moon Empress to enter their own federation inside the Class 6 dimensional rift that they controlled. If the Moon Empress wanted to force her way in, she would let the sacred source life form feed the moon and collect the moon from the dimensional world. It would definitely lead to a war. As the Radiance Majesty's Moon Empress, it was impossible for her to lead a war to the Radiance Federation. Therefore, even if the Moon Empress obtained the Moon Roar, it would greatly increase her strength. The Moon Empress still didn't insist. At that moment, the Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan continue. "Master, I have a way to enter the swamp world. It's very simple. I'll bring Master there now." To his master, the Moon Empress, Lin Yuan didn't intend to use the artifact made from the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac. However, if he let the Moon Empress directly enter the Spirit Lock spatial zone, it would definitely expose Morbius' existence. Morbius' existence was of great importance. Moreover, Lin Yuan had already discovered it. Morbius must have a huge secret regarding the dimensional world. Being mysterious was a good and a bad thing. That was because being mysterious often came with risks. After thinking about it, he thought about how the Moon Empress had treated him. Lin Yuan was prepared to let the Moon Empress enter the Spirit Lock spatial zone to take a look. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the Moon Empress speak. "Little Yuan, you can enter the swamp world. You will either be using the power of your sacred source life form, or a trump card that you haven't shown before. No matter which one it is," Xianxia said. "Only you know it. That's the safest way. You have the ability to revive the soul of the Heaven-Blessed Mansion's second Hall Master, Yu Gui. Tell your secret to Master. If one day Master dies," Xianxia said, "my soul will be plundered by the enemy using some special means. It's not that I can't find out your secret through my soul." As she spoke, the Moon Empress handed 2 silver gold bells to Lin Yuan. "Chef Supreme gave you a treasure made from the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac." At that time, the sacred source life form, the treasure cave golden toad, died. The skin and stomach sac were taken by Chef Supreme, while the eyes were taken by Bamboo Monarch. The eyes and stomach sac also have storage functions. The storage space in the eye is much larger than the storage space in the stomach. Master asked for these 2 eyes for you. They were refined into a treasure. Instant Beast Evolution Quotient. Please bookmark this site so that you can read it online the next time there's an update. Starting to update the mobile version of Do 5.